Good evening, everyone. Welcome to The Reason We Learn and Dissident Dispatch. Sorry for the slight delay there. For some reason, it was taking a while to spin and spin around. So here I am, and welcome to the show. I know there's been a lot going on lately. I appreciate everyone who has come to listen to a show about kids and schools. I know you probably have other things you're interested in right now, the assassination attempt, the VP pick, all of that. If you're watching on the replay, then maybe that doesn't concern you, but I'm glad that you've taken a break from that to come over here and help keep the eye on the ball, which is day-to-day lives of Americans that are not going to be fixed anytime soon, even if, well, regardless of who wins. Okay. We parents have to take responsibility for making sure that our kids are getting the very best education they can get and are not being abused in the process. So, to that end, welcome to the channel. If you're not already a subscriber, please consider subscribing and go ahead and like and share the broadcast so others can join in on this. If you are a subscriber here and you're familiar with how Dissident Dispatch works, it is live. I will take questions and comments as they are relevant, as they come up, but not necessarily as I'm speaking. And obviously, first preference goes to super chats, and then from there, members of my community, and so on. I would like to also direct you to the description below the video where I have put ways that you can support the channel. You can join the community at wokescreen.com, and you can also join my parent support group, which is also available at wokescreen.com/the reason we learn, and you can find all the links there. You can make a straight donation, or you can use one of my affiliates. And I would like to start the show by plugging for one of them. Because I focus so heavily on education, I get to see what people are doing to try to fix it, try to make it better for our kids. And I come across some opportunities that I want you parents to consider as you're looking towards next year. You may not want to homeschool. I know I'm a big homeschool proponent. You may want to have your kids do something that is still structured, organized, not done by you. I'm also a big proponent of classical education and the Socratic method. And this spring, I had the pleasure of interviewing Michael Strong, the founder of the Socratic Experience, a virtual school, grades 3 through 12, in an episode entitled The Education We'd Wish We'd Had. And to me, that title says it all. They provide Socratic discussions of classical texts with a commitment to rationality while supporting students in entrepreneurial and creative projects. And you can now get a 10% discount. My listeners, my audience can get a 10% discount by using the link in the affiliates below when you enroll your student. Please check it out. It is free to check it out and go to the parent orientation and go through that process and see what they offer. Go to the website. The link is down below. I can't recommend it highly enough. So if I were putting my child in a virtual experience, that's where she would be going. So please do look at that. Now that that housekeeping is out of the way, why are we here? Well, today we're here because I am the recipient of an regular email newsletter from the American Federation of Teachers. Not because I was ever a member, but because I've subscribed. So they'll probably take me off the list after this. Maybe they will, maybe they won't. I don't know. There might be just as many people who watch this webinar we're about to see, and they love it. I can't vouch for that. But I think first and foremost that you, the American taxpayer, the American parent, need to be aware of what the teachers' unions offer by way of professional development. That is teacher training. You should know what kind of courses they're offering, and then what is the content of those courses, because teachers get credit for them. They get professional development credit, as you will hear when we go through this show. What we're going to do, I recorded it. So this is my recording of the show. And you'll notice that I've kind of changed the screen size to cover a live chat that was going on to shield the teachers who participated, to shield their privacy. I am not a person who's interested in going after individual teachers. Okay. Even though I have told you on this channel, please do check your teachers' social media to see what they're saying and see what they're doing. That is not the same thing as me saying, hey, let's out these individual teachers when they're participating in a webinar. That is not what I'm about. I'm not going to do that. So I signed up for this. I watched it last week. I have viewed it in its entirety. That's how I know it's of value for you to see. We will go through it. I will pause periodically. If I'm not pausing in a place where you have a question, put your question in the comments, put your comment in the comments. And when I do pause, I will take a look each time I pause to see if there was something in a timely manner. Okay. But otherwise, I'm going to try to just get through this and y'all talk amongst yourselves. But this is important because teachers union means most of the teachers are public school teachers. That means they're paid for with tax dollars. And these programs, these webinars are offered sometimes by an NGO, like in this case, an NGO may or may not be paid by the teachers union to pay to deliver this. I don't know. Can't say one or the other. They may volunteer to do it because they're an NGO. They're getting money from somebody else, or they may get a stipend. They may get paid to do it, which is then, money's fungible. Eventually leads back to your tax dollars because dues are paid from the teachers. So you ought to know it's in the public interest. All right. Now that I've said all that, I'm going to share my screen. And we will take a look at all of this. Okay. So the program or the newsletter I get is called Share My Lesson. And it tells me all the webinars and the classes. There's some online classes that you can take and things that people can do for professional development. And this one caught my eye. It's called Beyond Rainbows and Pronouns. And it is about gender identity in elementary school. So yes, Mary, let me just bring this up here, guys. Mary Weller asks, thank you for doing this. Will it be recorded so we can refer to it later? Yes, it will. So there are two ways you can look at this. You can watch my show with commentary, which is now live, but will be available immediately after the show as a recording. And you will be able to view, if you wanted to view it like in its entirety and everything on the AFT website, I believe you will be able to do that as well. But you obviously won't have the commentary. So you'll have two different ways to do it. And I realize I might be parasiting my own show to tell you that, but I like to believe I'm adding value through the discussion to the broadcast. So let's continue. All right. So we're going to get going. If you have any difficulty hearing this, if it's not loud enough on your end, please let me know. Put something in the comments, say, Deb, we can't hear it. And then I will try to troubleshoot. Okay, here we go.
Good afternoon, everyone. On behalf of the AFT, I'd like to welcome everybody to today's webinar called Beyond Rainbows and Pronouns, Gender Identity in Elementary School. My name is Ellie. I'm working with AFT's Educational Issues Department this summer, and I'll be your moderator. We're going to start off by watching a short video on how our webinars work.
Welcome to Share My Lesson webinars. Thank you for joining us. Before we begin, let's go over a few housekeeping tips. We'd love to create an interactive and engaging space. Please open the group chat widget. Tell us where you're from and why you chose this webinar today. This is also your place to interact with other participants and our presenters.
I just realized something. This, in fact, is not my video. This is the video I recorded it before editing. So excuse me, I'm going to bring up mine because when we go to that, it'll show the chat. So I edited this and I'm bringing it up from StreamYard. So let me go get the right one. My bad. Totally my bad. Hold on a second. It's important, actually, like I said, not just for the reasons I gave you about privacy. It's important for another reason. Okay, here we go.
Good afternoon, everyone. On behalf of the AFT, I'd like to welcome everybody to today's webinar called Beyond Rainbows and Pronouns, Gender Identity in Elementary School. My name is Ellie. I'm working.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead. We already got that. Okay, here we go.
Thank you for joining us. Before we begin, let's go over a few housekeeping tips. We'd love to create an interactive and engaging space. Please open the group chat widget. Tell us.
It's still not the right one. This is very frustrating. I'm sorry. I've done this and it's still pulling up the wrong thing. You guys are like, what's with your production values? Yeah, I'm a single, I'm a one person shop here. Anybody want to be my producer? Dead serious. I would love it. I could really use the help. All right, let's see. I think this is the one. This might be it. Okay. Gosh, I certainly hope so.
Good afternoon, everyone. On behalf of the AFT, I'd like to
Yep, I
welcome
think this is the one
everybody
I
to
did.
today's webinar called Beyond Rainbows and Pronouns, Gender Identity in Elementary School. My name is Ellie. I'm working with AFT's Educational Issues Department this summer, and I'll be your moderator. We're going to start off by watching a short video on how our webinars work.
Welcome to Share My Lesson webinars. Thank you for joining us. Before we begin, let's go over a few housekeeping tips. We'd love to create an interactive and engaging space.
So did you catch that? That's why that was one of the things I didn't want you to miss. Did you catch the garment that the person is wearing? What? I'm not trying to pick nits here, you guys, but did anyone catch? I mean, I've seen it 3 times. You've seen it twice without my annotation, and you've seen it once with my annotation. I just noticed things. I'm a little detail person. I noticed it. Make of it what you will.
Few housekeeping tips. We'd love to create an interactive and engaging space. Please open the group chat widget. Tell us where you're from and why you chose this webinar today. This is also your place to interact with other participants and our presenters. Express your thoughts. Using the reactions widget, you can provide feedback about the presentation.
And they did. And what I'm going to do is after this broadcast, I will be doing a blog post about it with screenshots of the comments, but I'll be able to edit out their names and comment on their comments. They did provide feedback, and it was very, very interesting. For now, you're just going to have to take my word for it that most of the teachers loved what you're about to see.
Feedback is invaluable to us and our presenting team. If you have questions for the presenters, use the Q&A widget to ask them. For technical support during a live session, we've got you covered. You can ask tech questions in the same widget. If your screen freezes or you lose audio, please refresh your browser. If you're in search of resources for this session, you can find them listed in the resource list widget. When the webinar concludes, please take a moment to rate and review this session. This helps Share My Lesson users find the best content and influences future webinars.
And that does happen too. People give reviews, they put a number of stars, and if you go on the Share My Lesson website, you see that people rate these, and this one got rated very highly.
You may be here for professional development credit. To qualify, watch for at least 35 minutes of the presentation and
that's just over half.
Answer at least 2 poll questions. These will appear under the slide widget. At the end of the session, click on the certificate icon to download your certificate. From all of us on the AFT Share My Lesson team, thank you for joining us and enjoy the webinar.
And here is your practice poll question. Does your school or district accept Share My Lesson certificates for PD credit? Please take a moment to answer and be sure to hit the submit button. Once you submit, tell us in the group chat why you chose that answer.
I was just testing it. And now you can see that this is, I fast forwarded it.
So it looks like about half of your schools accept Share My Lesson certificates. Now it is my pleasure to introduce our presenter, Laura Gelperin. She is the Division Director for Sex Education and Training Team at the Advocates for Youth.
I have covered advocates for youth on this channel before. If you go to some of the other streams I've done about sex ed and gender ed in my playlists, you will find more information about advocates for youth. But you should also go to their website and check it out for yourself.
We are so pleased to have her with us today. Thank you for joining us and welcome.
Great. Thanks so much, Ellie. Really appreciate it. And thanks to everyone who's choosing to spend some time this afternoon learning more about this issue. It's certainly something on the top of many of our minds. And so I appreciate the opportunity from AFT to be able to share this with you during the next hour. And I'm really looking forward to hearing from you in that chat. So I'm going to make sure I have that window way up and hearing a little bit more about what this experience is like for all of you. So as Ellie said, my name is Nora Gelprin. I use she, her pronouns, and I work for an organization called Advocates for Youth. Let me tell you a little bit about what we're going to do over our time here together. We're just going to do a quick snapshot of the national climate around these issues related to gender identity in elementary school. I want to not make assumptions that people are super familiar with all the terms and the concepts, so we'll spend a little bit of time watching a couple videos, just doing a brief review to make sure we have it all sorted out correctly. And then obviously, I'm guessing many of you have joined today really looking for some strategies. How can I help? What can I do to better educate my colleagues and better support my students? So
I'm going to stop there for a second. You notice you said better educate my colleagues. So even if a teacher did not attend this, their colleague might come to them and say, I went to this webinar, you should go. Or if you kind of beg off going and you don't implement some of the things she's suggesting, you're likely to have a colleague suggest this. And there's a big difference when you're teaching between somebody making a helpful suggestion and somebody saying something in such a way that you feel like, if I don't do it, what's going to happen to me? And I don't mean don't attend the webinar, but think about things, implement lessons, et cetera, the way the person who went to the webinar is doing it. They are actually encouraging them to go back and put social pressure and professional pressure on other teachers. But you probably didn't even notice it, right? Educate your colleagues. Do you think about at your work educating your colleagues or collaborating with your colleagues or sharing things with your colleagues? To me, that word is noteworthy. If you're equals and your colleagues, I don't look to my colleagues to educate me. That's just a very strange framing. I thought I would call that out.
Certainly spend some time on that. And then lastly, want to leave you with a lot of resources, some here on Share My Lesson, others available as well. And of course, you'll get the slides and a wonderful Trans-Affirming Schools Project resource guide as well. So you'll have lots of stuff at your fingertips, which I think will be helpful. Just a note that I'm not here to debate statistics. I'm not here to talk about whether gender identity and people who are transgender exist in the world. We know they do.
We're going to start this webinar by me telling you what I'm not here to discuss. I'm not here to debate it. So the operating principle, or the operating premise rather, of this webinar is for teachers. But the teachers union is approving of this program. And it's not debatable. It's not debatable. Yes, Mary, I did get the super helpful handouts, and we are going to look at them later in the show. So we'll go through that as well. For now, I just kind of went for continuity purposes and go through this, but I wanted to call that out to you that I'm not, trans exists, etc. Now, please bear in mind, the vast majority of what we call GC, gender critical, people who are critical of all this program, the vast majority of us don't deny that there are people who choose to live in the body or whatever, like change their bodies to appear to be the opposite sex. That is not what she's talking about when she says that trans people exist. And you'll hear exactly what she means, but she's telling you that what she thinks is true. And that's where the AFT is on this issue as well.
They're an important part of our community, and we need to create our schools to affirm and be inclusive of their lived experiences. So
we need to design our schools to affirm and be inclusive of their lived experience. Did you think that it was the job of the school to affirm people? Now, inclusive, I mean, by law, you show up at the school, whatever age you are, they have to let you in. I mean, they have to educate you. That's not what she means. When she says inclusive, that means recognize, it's part of affirming. Recognize as real and true and to the point where you're going to celebrate it, honor it, all the things. Now, I ask you, do you feel they do that for every identity or just some? Just the ones that, they'll say, well, we just take, Christians for granted. I mean, we don't need to affirm that. Or that's a choice. Or Jews or, Muslims or whatever. Oh, no, I'm sorry. They already do go out of their way for that, as we saw in the graphic. But is that the job of schools? Is that the job of public schools? Is that the job of public school teachers paid for with your tax dollars to affirm lived experiences of individuals there? Think about that as we continue.
We're really going to look at how we do that and kind of jump over
not whether we should do it, how we do it.
The whole political discussion that seems to be happening.
A political discussion that seems to be happening around a thing that not everybody in America agrees with, but we're all paying for it and subjecting our children to it. But, they seem to be having this conversation
a lot these days. So I'd just like to acknowledge that up front. So for folks who aren't familiar with Advocates for Youth, I welcome you to check out our website. It's advocatesforyouth.org. As you can see here on the screen, we have lots of free material about youth sexual health and rights. We work a lot with schools across the country and actually internationally. So I'll share my contact information at the end. If anybody wants to get in touch with us around professional development, resources, policies, we are really excited and delighted to support you in these efforts related to sex education, and that includes LGBTQ issues as well, of course.
They're delighted. They're delighted to work with the schools, and it's free. It's just totally free. So that's the other problem I brought up on the channel before, is that you're paying the teachers, but this curriculum that she's talking about, these materials, these resources, aren't costing you a red cent. And you might think, oh, good, phew, thank goodness for that. No, but you are paying the person to present them. And what's more, it's not going to show up in your school board budget. When you go to the school board and you're ranting and raving and yelling and screaming about the thing that was presented in the school board's looking at the budget, looking at things they paid for, and they're like, what do you want us to do? Your gripe isn't with us. We don't hire the teachers. You're going to have to go to the principal and the superintendent about that. We don't train the teachers. You're going to have to go to them and what they give credit for and their teacher training programs and all those things. We don't discipline the teachers. We don't do it, unless they commit some kind of a crime or whatever, and then they have to deal with that some other way with law enforcement. But they have a say over the superintendent, and then that superintendent has a say over everybody on down. But this isn't their purview. So how do we control the curriculum? How do we do that? I don't know, control the teachers. Oh, right, you can't. Because they're unionized. Even if they don't have collective bargaining, they still have, in terms of their salaries and so on in your state, they still have collective power. They can still strike. They can still vote in who they want, et cetera. And they do. They're a political organization. So whether you like it or not, you can scream at your school board all day long. It's not going to change whether this gets in the classroom.
So we welcome you to check out what we've got to offer and to be in touch directly. A little bit about me, as folks often ask, like, how did you get to be paid to talk about sex all day? Well, it's a really amazing job, and I'm delighted to have been doing it for over about 25 years now.
Can you imagine talking about sex, especially sex with children? Or sex, children's sex and sexuality being taught to children. Can you imagine that just being a delightful job for 25 years? I'm not saying that it's not important for kids to learn sex ed in terms of the birds and the bees and disease and, things like that and their rights and their responsibilities. But that's not what we're doing here, is it?
I've worked at Advocates for the past 10 years. I work with colleagues who are trans-identified and did a lot of authorship of some of the materials I'll be sharing with you. They tend to work more in the secondary field, and I love working with elementary educators, so that's how I came to be leading today's session. So I'm really delighted to learn more about you and the areas that you're coming from. Just a couple of caveats about our session and our time together. I wanted to just make folks know that this is a complicated issue and we've got an hour to try to figure it out together. So this really will be very top line, very elementary 101, no pun intended there. We also know that this issue changes really quickly. And so it's something that even, 5 years ago, even, a year ago, 6 months ago, things are constantly being updated and changed. So just expect that you may leave with more questions than answers, and that is okay. It's also something that there's a lot of misinformation and disinformation being intentionally spread about. So I am always happy to share citations, point you to more information, journal articles, whatever you might be looking.
Now we've gone over things like journal articles in this space and things like the drag queens, drag pedagogy. We've gone through that. We've also gone through some of their sources. But what's interesting is the teachers are never getting access to things like GenSpect or any of the sources, the research, the journal articles that contradict literally everything she's about to tell you. So if you're a teacher, especially a young and experienced teacher, you don't know how to read, journal articles and compare and contrast. It's not really your thing. But here it is. Teachers Union has this person in. They're telling me, look, I have the science. Here it is. That's all you need to know, especially if this is the mainstream. This is okay. I do this. I don't get in trouble, which we now know is pretty much the case.
Looking for, but I hope that you're here with an openness toward learning. All right, so let's do our first poll together. I'm curious for who is in the room. I saw the impressive registration list with many incredible folks from all over the country and all over the world. But I would love to just hear a little bit more about your role at school or in the places that you work. I recognize not everyone works for a school yet or at all. So please feel free to choose the role that maybe best reflects how you interact with your learners. We've got educator, maybe a counselor, social worker, someone who sees young people one-on-one. Maybe you're in a health department or as a school nurse, or maybe you're an administrator and you run programs or you work in a community-based organization or other as well. So I'll give you a few more seconds to read through that. We're going to do a few of these kind of back-to-back to get our poll expertise up there. So let's see how we did. We'll just wait to get that published. Looks like about half of folks have participated, which is awesome. And I see some people putting more information in the chat. So wonderful, great. Some literacy interventionists, a fourth grade teacher, DEI coordinator, wonderful, a school counselor. Love it, love it, love it. All right, let me see if we can get these results up. All right, wonderful. So many of us are educators. Some of us play other roles. It was hard. I didn't want to give you so many choices to be overwhelming, but I appreciate people putting more information in the chat. It's always helpful to kind of get a sense of your background. Not so many administrators, so that's good. We won't have to worry too much about policies and those kinds of things, but I really appreciate everyone's perspective and then a unique lens that you'll be bringing to our conversation today. So here.
Sorry. So we have here 61% are educators, only a few social workers, 2% school nurses, 33% other. Not really sure what that could be. It could be parents, could be, who knows, but educators, 61%.
Here's another one. I like to ask a lot of questions of my group. So tell me a little bit about your understanding related to gender identity, students who identify as transgender or gender non-binary, gender queer. Would you say you're an expert? Would you say you know a lot, but you're kind of still learning? Maybe you're pretty good, or you're excited to be here to learn more, or maybe like this is all super brand new, which is why you definitely signed up for this. So.
This serves a purpose, by the way, a social pressure purpose. You may not realize that. If I ask you all where you are in your learning of this topic. Now, she has a prepared presentation. She's not actually answering individual questions. So she's not about to tailor. See, in teaching, if you try to figure out where your students are, it's usually because you want to individualize or, kind of tailor the training or the teaching to that place to meet them where they are. If you're just publicly gathering information, which she is, people are going to see, first of all, we have to trust their self-reporting accurately. And people are then going to see a certain percentage know a lot about this, certain percentage don't know about this. And that can serve as a tool for her to either emphasize that the particular group in front of her has learning to do, and they really need to consult the experts before they go and, push back or answer questions about this to parents or anybody else. Or look at how many wonderful folks we have that are experts at this. And then if you're not one or you don't agree, you might be like, oh, crap, I'm surrounded. I better get with the program. So there is a certain purpose to publicly asking how much you know about a topic. I hate to sound so conspiratorial. I know how these things work. Always with a smile. So, it sounds so innocuous.
I'll give you a chance to figure out where the poll widget is. I see some folks are trying to figure out their tech, which is understandable. Also then some time to figure out kind of just a quick self-assessment on how you feel about these issues, what your background understanding is. Obviously, this is not like a test. You're not getting graded. It's more just to get a quick snapshot of how folks are feeling about this issue. I love it. I love the enthusiasm. Some people are parents of trans kids, which is beautiful and wonderful. Welcome. I'm so glad you're here.
So now parents of trans kids will go to these trainings. And why do you think that is? Why do you think they will go to they're not teachers. They'll go to an AFT training and gather all this information. And now they can go back to the school and educate the educators if they don't go along with what they want to go along with, right? You might think, oh no, they just want to understand and figure out where their kid is coming. Maybe it's possible too, I suppose. But I hope they're also going to GenSpect. I hope they're also going, the teachers union might not be the best place to go for information about how to properly care for your trans child. I mean, assuming you believe in such a thing. I'm just saying, if that's how you see this whole situation, why are you going to the teachers union for your information? I mean, you could go straight to Advocacy for Youth if you wanted to. Most likely, it's to get the arguments you think are going to work best on your district, on your school board, on your teachers, to put pressure on them to do what you want.
People are, acknowledging that they have a lot to learn and they're excited to dig in. Really, really appreciate all this enthusiasm. All right, so let's see. Awesome. Okay, so we've got folks across the board, and this is really what I was hoping for. People that are here with maybe some personal experience, some experience in their families, in their classrooms, in the schools and communities you've worked in. Maybe you've got a lot to learn and that's why you're here. I hope.
So you see we have here 39%, is it 39% excited to learn a lot more? And then 33% know a lot, but still learning. And then 20% pretty good. And 7%, this is pretty new to me. So we have the majority of people here are excited and consider themselves knowledgeable and want to tell everybody else in the group that they do. How do you think the other people feel after that?
Some of the resources will be helpful as well. And then I just want to do one more. Sorry for all the polls back to back, but I love learning about you all.
I can't stress this enough. People who come at you and say, I want to know all about you. Tell me all about you before I tell you anything about me. Before I even show you any of my material, tell me all about yourselves. Give me all these little data points, etc. This is what people who use coercive control do too, by the way. It's a form of love bombing. You feel so cared for. You feel so understood. You feel so heard. Tell me all about you. Tell me about this. Tell me about that. She's not going to tailor the presentation. She's got her remarks prepared. So what is this for? If not to have you feel like she cares about you. She cares. Look at how interested she is in me and my needs. This is by design. This is how it's done.
hear a little bit about your current climate. So whether you're in a school or another organizational setting, doesn't really matter. Tell me a little bit about the current climate for young people who identify as transgender and non-binary. Would you say it's super affirming? Would you say it's, pretty good? Would you say like we're a work in progress? Or maybe not so much and we really like want to do more. And so that's why you're here to kind of
Look at these choices. Super affirming, pretty good, but more to do. Okay, work in progress. There are no bad. Have not done anything is bad. Now, I think most people in this audience, I could be wrong. Maybe you're watching this thinking I'm a crazy person, you hate me. I don't know. But most people in my audience are looking at this going, wait, E is good. A is pretty scary. What is super affirming? This is a presentation about elementary school, K through 6. I mean, K through 5, most places, but K through 6. What? Bad. We're going to put not good, okay, pretty good, super affirming. We have all kinds of value judgments attached to these. And now please answer. I'm sure there's nothing going on with this at all. Not at all a little struggle session.
learn some of those strategies or like we are at ground zero, we are just getting started. I don't even know what all these words mean. So just give me a quick sense of where you feel like your school community is these days. Great. So some of you are even sharing in the chat, which I love to see, your own personal identities around being LGBTQ. Thank you so much. We welcome and see you. Some are talking about having trans students in their school buildings. Amazing. I know we all do. We may not know that, but statistically,
we all do. We may not know that. It's so common now.
we all have young people identify in these ways in our school
Elementary
buildings.
school.
Right. I'm in Louisiana. Enough said. Thank you for that. Oh my gosh. Many of us are really struggling around this issue. So I'm glad we can connect today and learn more from each other. And
anyone watching from Louisiana, they're struggling. They're struggling. Okay.
Share some good information. Great. So again, across the board, we're really all of us in process. Some of us just getting started. Some of us kind of in the middle here.
Also notice she uses this us thing. We and us. That builds the whole sense that they're all on the same team. I take for granted none of you disagree with me. There's nobody here who would listen to any of this and take exception. Nobody here is listening with an eye towards how do I fight this? No. It's like we and us and we're all in this together. Anticipate any problems with that? Do you want the teachers in your school to operate that way, like the Borg? Not question things, take their cues from the teachers union about what they should teach your kids? When did the teachers union, by the way, get into teacher education? And isn't that a little bit self-serving? Think about it.
And so it's really nice to see that we're across the board, but that I appreciate people's openness and willingness to learn more. And so thank you for those results. Thank you for sharing that information. It's really wonderful. Okay, so let's dive into the national context a little bit. If you've been watching the news, reading newspapers, magazines, seen those headlines on social media, we know that there is a lot changing as it pertains to gender identity and schools in particular. We are really going to focus in on schools, but I know a lot of this stuff goes beyond schools in terms of gender affirming healthcare, in terms of book bans, in terms of all those kinds of things.
The book bans are not happening outside of the schools. It doesn't go beyond the schools. It is all about the schools. You see what she just did there? I know some of this goes beyond the school. No, it doesn't. It's really about the kids. What they're doing is they really desperately want you to feel like opposing this with kids, opposing anything to do with trans identifying people, whatever, is about hate and is about rejecting anyone with gender dysphoria. And that is not the case. So once they can frame it that way, oh, I know this goes beyond that. No, it doesn't. It really doesn't. As far as gender affirming healthcare, it does, because it's so tied to the schools. The kids show up. The vast majority of kids who show up for this healthcare first got an inkling of it at school. Then they went on the internet to dive down the rabbit hole of places like Advocates for Youth and others, Tumblr, who knows what else, TikTok. And then they showed up at the clinic. If the schools were not presenting kindergartners with the gender corn or the genderbread man and all of these things in kindergarten and going, what are your pronouns? And you were assigned your sex at birth. Do you think we would have so many confused, anxious children seeking this care? And as far as the trans affirming care for adults, that's not where the heat is coming from. The heat is not coming from people who are 35 years old who just can't take their gender dysphoria anymore. They've been through 10 years of therapy and they've decided that they want to go have surgery. That's not what is generating all of the political backlash. But she's like mushing them all together because then it's easier to say you people are all just hateful bigots. Not, maybe we need to draw some lines here and have some limiting principles because these are not our children. And by the way, they are children. They cannot consent. And their parents love them and just want to do what's best for them. And if a bunch of experts from the school come and start pressuring them and threatening them, just like it was with ADHD. Remember, they're like, your child has, ADHD and you need to medicate them. And then parents found themselves in a position of, so what are you telling me? If I don't medicate my child, you're going to do what? What are you going to do? Do I have to worry that you're going to, their grades are going to be lower because you're pushing back on me? For a long time, that was the kid. People were told, if you don't medicate your kid, I'm going to put them in like a special class. They were being bullied and threatened and pressured into all kinds of medication. Same thing with SSRIs. And there are plenty of parents vulnerable to this. If you're in a divorce situation, you're extraordinarily vulnerable. One parent might buy it. The other parent doesn't. You're done.
I also do want to give a little bit of a content warning because we will be talking about some mental health trends and talking about the issues related to suicide. So if that's something that may be upsetting for you, I invite you to take care of yourself.
Actually, arguing for the, drugging and mutilation of children is upsetting enough for me, but I'm going to keep watching anyway.
We do a quick snapshot of what those issues look like pertaining to this particular population. So a lot of people ask me, like, why are we talking so much about these issues? Why so much attention on this population? It is true that the vast majority of people identify as cisgender, which means they don't connect personally with the transgender or non-binary community. But we know with our students, identity is really evolving these days, and the rates related to suicide ideation and attempts, this population and all of these young people need and deserve our respect. They need our support, and they need affirming schools in which to thrive.
This is a lie. Okay, let me parse it for you because I don't want to say it's a lie that children are anxious and wanting to plan and unalive themselves at a higher rate than ever before. That is true. That is true. If you go watch Base Camp with my friends, the Collinses, it's another YouTube channel I highly recommend. They recently put out a show about how bad is public school anyway, and they showed the statistics from last year alone that showed that 1 in 4 young women, school age, whatever, had made a plan. 1 in 4 had made a plan. 30% of them have a persistent sense of sadness. Has nothing to do with this. There are a lot of anxious and depressed kids in America, the vast majority of whom go to public school. I personally think that it goes beyond correlation. I actually think there's a causal relationship, and I've said so explicitly, and I've showed evidence to support my argument. But what she just did here is she took a truth and wrapped it in a bunch of lies. She's taking that there's a lot of anxiety, there's a lot of uncertainty, there are a lot of confused kids, there are a lot of kids who feel like, I don't know who I am, and I think I'm supposed to know who I am at the tender age of 6 or 8 or 10. And it's this crisis. If I don't know who I am in the relation to how everybody else sees me, then it's an existential problem. Or it could be something else, the climate crisis, whatever, that is causing all of this anxiety. And we also know that this is very prevalent in children who are on the spectrum, children of ADHD, children of divorce, children of comorbidities. There's some other thing going on in their lives. All of this is true. So, but then to tie it together and say that we need affirming schools, trans affirming schools to help them, to help this population, or to imply that the kids who identify this way, that's the life-saving thing, affirming them is saving their lives, that's statistically not true. Simply not true. What you find very often is they'll go through this and still end up wanting to make the same plan. Might not be right away. They might have a little bit of euphoria at first, but then later, possibly even as an adult. It's not a curative. It's not. Even the trans individuals, the transsexuals who I know who are adults, who transitioned as adults, will freely admit that what they've done is not a cure. It is the best sort of treatment that they could come up with after trying all the others. They don't magically feel all better. They feel better, but it didn't take care of everything. And it certainly would, they can talk about it. They'll say, I don't imagine this would have fixed my, juvenile anxiety and puberty fears. Okay. So she's conflating things. And to me, that's one of the most sinister parts of this whole gender identity movement is they're taking very troubled kids and those kids are not getting the help they need because they're being shoved into a funnel to get a very specific kind of treatment for a whole host of things without examining those things. You need to also get Pamela Garfield Yeager's book to fully understand this as well. She's been on my show recently, and I'll after the show, I'll put the link down below because that will help you.
So that's really one of the key reasons why we all need to improve our game and improve our climates when it comes to supporting these young people in particular.
We need to do this to support these young people. That's their responsibility. No, they have parents. They have parents. It is not the job of the school, never mind the teachers in the school, to support their mental health. That is not their job. It is their job to teach. It is their job to teach. Thank you. Leave them kids alone. That is actually a very good point. I would call it a procedure rather than a treatment. Yes, thank you. I know that some people will call it's at this age for sure. It's not. But you see how they're just magically blurring the line like we need to take care of the mental health of these children. No, that isn't your job. And teaching a subject doesn't fix mental health problems, especially if they're occurring for reasons outside the school, which very often they are. But even if they're inside the school, you teaching a specific curriculum or you focusing on a specific issue that happens to be politically expedient for you as well, happens to align with your worldview and your religion, because I do call this a religion. It's like a cult religion. That is, you're not helping them. You're helping yourself. And it isn't your job. It's not your remit. I'm sorry. Just feel pretty freaking strongly about that.
Particular. And it's no surprise that we're seeing a lot of headlines because a lot of these bans that have been introduced across the country, some at the state level, some at the federal level, are all connected. We really know whether it's bans on sex ed that me and my team deal with every day, bans related to students who identify as transgender, bans related to abortion, toward contraception, toward all the things, CRT a couple of years ago. I mean, oh my gosh.
Oh my gosh. The taxpayers who fund all of this, whose children they are, and who have no choice but to send their kids to these schools. Oh my gosh, all these bans. What happened to our democracy? What happened to we have to protect our democracy? I mean, you guys know I don't believe in that and we're a republic. But what that means is that we sent representatives to our state houses and we said, hey, please stop these public servants from serving themselves to our children. Please stop them from grooming our kids. We don't want that. Okay? We don't want that. And those parents who do want it can do it on their own time and their own dime. But that is not the job of school. That is not what we're paying for. More of them voted for that than not. And guess what? Ta-da! Same thing for the abortion stuff outside of the school situations. Oh, what does that mean? You can't just hand out condoms and contraception at the school? You can't drive the kid over to Planned Parenthood for an abortion? Boo-hoo. When was that your job? They have parents. If they need to go see a social worker because the parents are, again, still not your job, teacher. But she acts like, oh my goodness, democracy didn't go our way.
it's overwhelming. And it's all really part of a very concerted effort. And it's no mistake then that we see maps like this around some of the anti-trans legislation.
Anti-trans, you see that framing? Anti-trans legislation. I would call it anti-grooming legislation myself, because it really primarily concerns children and or protocols for certain kinds of surgeries and treatments and things like that. But it's anti-trans. Another thing they lump into anti-trans is, no, sir, you can't go in the women's bathroom or locker room or prison. That's anti-trans. I call that pro-decency, pro-human rights, pro-woman, even if you prefer. It's not anti-trans. Pro-common sense, pro-recognition of reality. You know, one of those be good.
That pops up in lots of different ways, kind of starting to really ramp up. And so this is from a great group called the Transformation Project. I invite you to check out their resources. They really stay on top of the latest of what's going on across the country. And then because we're here talking about young people, I wanted to show you this related to youth in particular. So this is where, you know, when you see a lot of red, that's really worst case scenario around the.
Do you see this? Do you see this? All the red is the kids at risk. At risk. So you might look at this. The teacher's going to look at this. These teachers whose knowledge of, you know, statistical analysis is probably Zippo. I was an elementary school teacher, and to this day, anything I know about statistics and information design, I've learned since I graduated graduate school. So I certainly didn't learn it in my teacher program. And I'm, Florida's black. Look at this scary map. Oh my God, it's so scary, right? It's terrifying. And what are they basically telling you? These are the kids who are at risk because we can't teach them these things. It's shameless, really.
Most restrictive and regressive laws being introduced and passed. We've got
restrictive and regressive. I would call them, they are restrictive, necessarily so. Kind of like, what are we going to say then? California has the most restrictive laws against ever mentioning the word Jesus. California has the most restricted. California, New Jersey are so restrictive. They ban any discussion whatsoever of, America being a good place. Would you call it that? That's what they're calling it. They're saying because we can't groom your children and because we can't do this stuff in Florida in a K-6 classroom, like at all. It's so regressive. I don't really consider it progress to tell a child that because they like pink, even though they have a penis, they're probably a boy, or they're probably a girl, rather, trapped in a boy's body. They're in the wrong body. That's progress? To equate liking pink with being the opposite sex? That's progress? What happened to science? I thought, progress means thinking scientifically, not scientism, not, this weird culty stuff of, the gender essence of my feels, of what I feel like as a woman. That's not scientific. I hate to break it to you. Biology is.
Got some good news on our coasts and in our central area, but certainly that amount of red just really breaks my heart. And it really tells us that we all have a lot of work to do together to support.
We have a lot of work to do together.
Support each other and to do better by young people. And as folks are saying in the chat, to really make sure that young people can thrive. Young people deserve to have a supportive place to go to school. And so I totally agree with you, Trent. I see what
you can have a supportive place to go to school that doesn't validate your delusions, that doesn't affirm your delusions. In fact, I would consider it more supportive if they didn't. They made sure that you were directed to the proper professional to help you deal with whatever issues there are that make you so uncomfortable inside your own body that you start doing this.
You're saying in the chat, and I would not be here if I wasn't completely on board with you. In terms of mental health updates, I just wanted to give you a quick snapshot of information from the Trevor Project.
The Trevor Project, for the record, is the one that came up with the bogus statistic about the percentage of youth who will unalive themselves if we don't affirm them. absolutely categorically false. They also stretch the statistics about how many trans people are murdered or experience violence, whatever. And they conveniently ignored the fact that the vast majority of them are aggressed against by other trans people.
Really incredible national organization that does a lot of work related to mental health and suicide ideation. So I want to give them a shout out and really praise their resources and their research. So this came from a very recent national survey on mental health of young people who identify as not just transgender and non-binary, but also LGBTQ. So what you're seeing here, and I won't read these data points to you, but it's really alarming the number of young people who are struggling with their mental health. I mean, I think because of COVID, we could say all of us are struggling with mental health, but in particular, young people who have these personal identities have a compounded risk factor when it comes to homes that may not be inclusive and affirming, school buildings that may be passing some of these regressive policies. And then if you look at the bottom, in terms of number of young people, 90% of LGBTQ youth said that their well-being was negatively impacted by recent politics. So
Was it, or do they feel like it is because that's what you're telling them that it will be? Because I've been on the receiving end of people like that screaming at me. This time last year in Philadelphia, when I went to speak to Moms for Liberty, we were surrounded by so many young people who, claim to be LGBTQ, whatever, screaming at us about things we were allegedly doing to them that we weren't even doing. And then talking about how what we were doing was impacting them. And it's like, how is it you're here? What do you do? You're screaming at me. Like, what are you talking about? Nobody is impacting you. As to the part about the families who are not very affirming, maybe those families genuinely love and care for their children and they're not about to affirm a delusion and you've gotten in between them. You're triangulating and now you're calling the family the problem. You are the problem. It is not your job, ma'am. Now, that said, there are families that have other problems. And remember, I said a few minutes ago, there are comorbidities that may drive a child to look for external validation and support and love and so forth because they're not getting it at home because parents are going through a divorce. One sibling is getting a lot of attention because the sibling has problems. They're falling on hard times because Bidenomics. There could be any number of reasons that are causing this kid tremendous anxiety and identity crisis. They could be autistic and undiagnosed, especially girls, because they mask. But they're not sure how to mask when the social cues are being changed every single day. Like what it is to be whoever they think they are, it changes every day. New versions of selves to mask out. Which one do I pick? Who do I mask as? I don't know. There are like 17 different choices to be a girl. I have girl parts. I don't know. Do you think maybe it just becomes easier to go, I'm non-binary? There's a thing. Okay. There always were many, many ways to be a girl. And there always were many, many ways to be a boy in terms of how you would manifest that. But if you're going to call yourself that and all these other things, if you're a person on the spectrum, that's incredibly difficult. Like I said, especially those girls. But we don't talk, we're not worried about making sure that they are actually getting what they need and they don't know what they need because they're kids. They look to adults to recognize with some humility that we don't know either, that the best we can do is say, it seems like you need some help. Let me see if I can get in touch with your parents, have your parents get in touch with some people or choose some people to get you some help. And that's where it ends. I've observed that your child is feeling upset in school, seems to be, withdrawn, seems to be anxious, seems to be, not doing very well, etc. I'm not really sure what's going on, but I thought you should know because I spend 8 hours a day with him or her and you don't. And I just want to share this information so you can get some help. If there's no parent in the picture, that's what school counselors are supposed to be for. Not to go ferret out, like who has problems? Let me go find someone with a problem. And if I can't find one, I'll make one. Justify my existence. That's not what they're supposed to do.
can't pretend that young people aren't hearing, absorbing, aware of what's going on the national landscape. And we also know, if you look on the right, that families are considering moving out of state in order to protect their kids, in order to do what's best for their young people. So this has really dire consequences. This isn't just what's happening in our school buildings, but that's certainly the area that we may have the most locus of control. And
notice locus of control, first of all. But after that, people are thinking of moving. Yeah, that's what people do. If you, again, with the, our democracy, except when we don't like the results. If the majority of people in the state don't agree with you and they don't want this taught in the schools. Now, frankly, I don't think any school should be able to do this. I don't. Not with public dollars. Hell no. I think it's immoral and wrong and should be just straight up banned because children cannot consent. And that's the beginning, middle, and end of it for me. But that she completely ignores the vast majority of parents in these places who want it the way they want it. And she has no respect for that. Oh, it's dire. Some people are even considering leaving. Yeah, okay, bye. I weep for your children. I do. I weep for your children. If you feel like you need to pull up stakes and move to a state where they will allow you to drug your child and mutilate your child. You just can't wait till 18. Not possible for you. Well, then you know what? That's why it's America. That's why it's a republic.
And where we'll really focus. And so another thing I just wanted to point out is that we know that there's also really disproportionate risk for suicide ideation, which is what's on the left, and suicide attempts, which is what on the right.
She is drawing a causal relationship between that and this idea of, their gender nonconforming or whatever. And the Trevor results and the Trevor research is false. It's beyond flawed. It's fake. But she's quoting it.
And so you'll see, if you just look between cis men and women at the top, and then we get to trans women and trans men, and then really around folks that identify as genderqueer or non-binary and questioning, you can just see the huge disparities, right? And this isn't because of how someone identifies. This is because of rampant and pervasive homophobia and transphobia in particular. So this is at our societal level where we're not doing enough and we're not doing the right things to protect our young people.
We're not doing enough. We're not doing the right things. Homophobia, transphobia, whatever. Value judgment, judgment period. These are children. And this is about elementary school. We're not doing enough. To do what? Tell parents they're wrong about their own kids? Tell parents they can't raise their kids the way they want to? In America, free country. I keep coming back to these points, you guys. I'm going to repeat them 1,000 more times because I really want everybody to understand what liars they are. Our democracy. They hate democracy. They want a totalitarian state where you raise your kid the way we tell you to do it. And if you don't like it, we're taking your kid away. You're not allowed to raise them in your faith or your values or your beliefs or even biological reality if we say no. And we reserve the right to just value judge you right into prison if we could. None of us are saying, lady, you need to go to prison. No, we're not. We're just saying you're wrong. We disagree with you and get your hands off our kids. Go to a private school. If they want to pay money and send their kids privately to that, until such time as it's literally banned to mutilate your children and give them these drugs, you go get a job doing that. But you have a job because there is a government monopoly with a giant pot of almost $1 trillion worth of money, a sizable amount of which goes to these unions. That is what incentivizes these NGOs and the donors to give to them. And we're fighting mad and we're pushing back. And she comes in with this, we need to do better. No, we need to do better. We parents need to do better to put people like you out of business.
People to allow them spaces to flourish, to live their lives and fully thrive.
False premise. This is the only way they can flourish and live their lives in a way that is, good for them. She doesn't know that. She can't know that. And I would argue that we do have a sizable chunk of evidence to suggest that what they're teaching is not helping people flourish
in ways that everyone has the right to. So that's what we're really going to focus in on today. But let me pause here because I know that this is a lot to take in, and I invite you in the attendee chat. Any reactions to this? Anything bubbling up for you? Maybe one word, maybe a particular statistic or a part of the map that stood out for you. So I
more social pressure.
invite folks to open up that attendee chat if you haven't already, and put in anything in there that's really bubbling up for you as we kind of just reflect on a snapshot of some of the national context, some of those laws. And I'll be quiet to allow time for people to chat because I know sometimes I talk too fast.
Shocked faces, thumbs down.
I see. Great. Thank you for that thumbs down. I appreciate that. If you're able to use your reactions, even better. Y'all are super advanced to figure out those emoji reactions. So thank you for sharing.
Super
those
advanced
on the
to
screen.
figure out
That's
how to use
really
emojis.
helpful. You're also welcome to share it in words.
They're
as
shocked
well.
and sad.
A student suicide brought me here today. Thank you for sharing that. I'm so sorry to hear that happened in your community. This is very disheartening. This is heartbreaking. Yeah, I am right there with you. This is what keeps me up at night. This is what motivates me to keep fighting each and every day.
Please don't anybody watching this come away from here thinking that I am not absolutely mortified by the level of depression, anxiety, apathy, nihilism, etc., amongst young people. I every time I read something about a young person who chooses to leave this earth rather than continue on and try to get help, or doesn't feel like they can get help, it breaks my heart. It really does. But putting it all into this one box and saying that in order for those of us who care about that to remedy it, we need to immediately jump on the assumption that the sad kid, the strange kid, the kid getting bullied, the kid who doesn't quite fit in socially, the kid who dresses strangely or whatever, might be this, should be encouraged to be this, should be, kind of like fed information to suggest that, or should be primed to be confused from the age of 6 by what gender are you? You were assigned at birth. And then, is it any wonder that by 4th, 5th, 6th grade, they're seriously confused? That they don't understand that maybe they play a role in this too? This is what's so annoying to me. I'm the bad guy. I don't care because I don't take their I've got a hammer, everything's a nail approach to things.
Because we need to do better and we need to do more. So I'm glad that we're all here in community to figure that out together and figure out how we can support each other. So thank you for that.
Support each other. I thought we were here for the kids. And even that's weird because they have parents.
So let's now move on and kind of make sure that we're all clear around some of these core concepts as they relate to sexuality. I know for many of us, we may have grown up, I don't know how old everybody is or when you went to school and all that good stuff, but for many of us in the education profession, we may have grown up when gender was just understood as the binary. So we only understood when we went to school, there was a boys' room, there was a girls' room. You lined up boys and girls, right? And that's kind of all we understood. And now
Yeah, because that's how it is. It was and still is exceedingly rare for a person to have actual gender dysphoria. I mean, the kind where the human being is so deeply uncomfortable in their own body. And usually they know at a very young age. Most of them will tell you something was not right from a very young age. And yet, interestingly enough, the vast majority of them still lived lives like they didn't unalive themselves. They still tried to live in that and made their decisions. They were very uncomfortable, increasingly uncomfortable. And then eventually as adults were like, I got to do something about this. Or they went to therapy. Why do I feel so I'm not connected to my body? And they sought help for that. No, the new concept. She wants to act like, and now we know. No, it's not now we know. It's now we've decided that if a very young child doesn't fit a gender stereotype, very different thing. Not what they feel inside in terms of like, I'm so massively uncomfortable in my own body, I cannot function, but just like, I really like trucks. Okay. That's a whole separate gender. That's like a third thing, or fourth or fifth or sixth or, whatever. That we now know this. It's not just the biology anymore. No, that's false. Absolutely false. There's no research anywhere that goes, look, we found it, the third thing.
Understanding of gender has really expanded. It really has evolved quite quickly. And so I want to make sure that just for us here in this room, in this conversation, that we feel pretty confident about our understanding related to these concepts. So I'm just going to present 3 of them to you pretty quickly. For some of you who are a little more advanced, hopefully this is just a quick refresher, but we know that this is something that's key to making sure we tease apart the difference between young people who identify as transgender and non-binary and young people who identify as gay, lesbian, bisexual, asexual, and many other identities related to their sexual orientation. So I'm just going to go through these 3 real quickly. I'll also show you a couple of quick and fun videos that might be helpful as well.
And these are shown, this kind of a diagram, by the way, is shown to children as well. But I'm sure that's not at all confusing for them. Remember, we're talking about elementary school still. These are kids who they're pre-sexual. They haven't gone through puberty. They don't know what sexual attraction is. They shouldn't. Why are we discussing it with them? They can't even conceive of it. But elementary school teachers need to know about this. Okay.
So we're going to talk a little bit about sex assigned at birth. And that's really something related to right when a baby's born, or even sometimes beforehand, we assign that baby a birth sex, and we'll talk more about that. And that's different from when that child is developing in their preschool years before they even...
We assign that child a gender. Nope, we observed it.
Generally tend to get to elementary school. They have a sense of who they are internally related to their gender. That's who we'll really talk more about.
Do you see this? Then they get to, she's talking about preschool and elementary school. And she's got cisgender, transgender, non-binary, and gender fluid. What? So there's birth, and then there's these identities. No, just no. Next thing you'll be telling me that there are vegan cats.
And then lastly, related to sexual orientation, we know that that's as they start to grow and develop and look outward and figure out who gives them butterflies in their stomach, who makes their palms sweaty, who do they find attractive.
And they won't know that if you start giving them puberty blockers at a very young age. Yeah, I just read a horrifying post or comment that was originally posted on Reddit by a young man who began to transition onto hormones, the puberty blockers at the age of, I believe, 9, and then onto estrogen and so forth and so on, and now wants to detransition. And his, bone plates the growth plates are sealed. He's only 5'3". His genitals never fully developed. He's never in his life felt sexual attraction to anybody, but is beginning to go back on testosterone to try to grow back hair, body hair. It never has had body hair, facial hair, any of that. Voice didn't change. So wants to go back, but has no idea what kind of man he's going to be at 5'3" with, you get the picture. We're not talking about them, though. We can't talk about them. No. Now they figure out who gives them butterflies in the stomach. Only if you give them the time to go through puberty, they will.
Want to be in relationships in this world, usually as they go through puberty. So let me break it down just a little bit. Just a second. Let me just make sure I know what I'm doing. Okay, great. So what I want to first talk about is sex assigned at birth. I'm not going to talk about this a ton. I just want to make sure that this one is super clear for...
This is a lie. I've had 3 children. Only one of them where we had an ultrasound, and they said, "Do you want to know the sex?" And I said, "Yes." And they said, "You're having a girl." And I knew there was a possibility they'd be wrong because, sometimes it's hard to see, but usually they're right. So yes, I had a girl. But being over the age of 35, and actually the second time I was 39 and the third time I was 42, I decided to have testing done. Now you might be saying, "Oh, Deb, would you have terminated?" It's beside the point. I'm not having that conversation, but I had the earliest testing you could have done. That would be 100% accurate. And the only thing that would not be able to detect yet would be spina bifida. But I was more interested in genetic abnormalities because being over 35, that was my biggest risk factor. So at 10 weeks, I went in for something called chorionic villi sampling twice. Did it twice. They take cells from your placenta and they come back and they tell you, whether the chromosomes are, in the right place and everything's right. And they tell you the sex of your child. How pray tell did they do that? There's no genitals to observe. They can't see. It's 10 weeks. It's 10 weeks. Some cases you can go all the way to 12 with this test. And now they have other tests besides. This is years ago, obviously. 18 years and 16 years, precisely. But somehow, looking at all those chromosomes, they were able to come back and tell me the sex of my children. And mind you, chromosomes are not dispositive of sex. It's gametes in the end. But unless you have sort of a rare situation with these other chromosomal abnormalities, which they would have also been able to detect, by the way, if I had an intersex child. Now, they couldn't tell if the child suddenly developed when the pituitary gland started forming both visible external genitalia, and that's a whole separate issue. But chromosomally, they knew what sex my children were, and they told me. This is not how it's done. This isn't like, 1980 or something.
Folks. So this is generally when, you go to a baby shower or someone sends you a birth announcement. They say, it's a boy, it's a girl. Sometimes people know that before the baby is even born. Sometimes they know it through an ultrasound. Sometimes they wait until the baby is delivered, the baby is here, all that good stuff. Generally, that assignment is male or female. It tends to happen at birth. But sometimes there can be an assignment that's called intersex. And that can be when you look between a little infant's legs and you don't clearly see a penis and a scrotum, or you don't clearly see a vulva and a vagina. And that has to do with chromosomes. It has to do with hormones. It has to do with all kinds of stuff that happens in utero. And sometimes that assignment can be known right when the baby is born. Sometimes it may not be obvious because it may have to do with internal genitals, internal gonads, or hormones, and they might not appear as an issue until puberty. So that person may have an intersex identity. We used to call that hermaphrodite. So just hear that word as kind of antiquated. These days, it's much more accurate to say intersex. But again, something that happens much earlier in the lifespan, right around when birth happens. So not something we're going to really talk much about today, but I like to just kind of define it.
But I'm going to throw it out there, and you might get just confused enough to not be able to figure out whether when I talk about trans, I'm talking about intersex. So you think that there's possibility of having, both, and that means you're really one or the, that you get to pick and all that. First of all, intersex people are one or the other sex. In terms of they're usually, if they are truly intersex, they are usually sterile, but they still have chromosomes that direct them. Their outward appearance is going to be pretty much one or the other, regardless of what's going on down there. It's just they have to have they have to choose what the appearance is going to be, but they tend to not be able to reproduce. There are all different kinds of conditions as far as, intersex and what that is. But the question of what can intersex individuals have biological children? They can. It says, I'm sorry, I'm wrong. They're not sterile. They can. It depends on the specific condition. There's so many different conditions. Intersex individuals may have variations in the reproductive anatomy, such as genitalia, chromosomes, or hormones, which can affect their ability to have children. Some intersex individuals may have a uterus and ovaries, while others may have testes and a prostate gland. In some cases, individuals may have a combination of male and female reproductive organs. And so they go through, they have different chromosomal. Like I said, my tests could have found that out because they detects chromosomal abnormalities. like this. Okay. So, but nonetheless, it is different than gender dysphoria. It's not about being trapped in the wrong body. It's not about how they present or want to present. And they love to bring these things up because they're like, see, look, people are different. You've probably met intersex people and never known it. And they didn't call themselves trans, like ever. You probably just saw them as a male or a female and they looked like one or the other. If they were male, that, and they were intersex and had certain kinds of conditions, I think it's Turner's, they might have seemed a little effeminate, but you probably didn't know. And you're talking about conditions that have rates like one in, there's so many conditions, but they're like, Klinefelter syndrome is 1 in about 1,000 male births. It's male specifically. Late onset congenital adrenal, something or other, 1 in 1,000. Trisomy X, 1 in 1,000 female births. There are different kinds of conditions. You're not having multiples of these in a class at your school. So why she even had to bring that up, I do not know. And chances are teachers are not going to be told my child is intersex. You're just not going to come up.
And set it aside. Typically, as we said, it's male and female, although occasionally there is an intersex identity as a result of some chromosomes or some hormones. Okay, we're going to spend our time really focusing on gender identity. So it's interesting. Gender identity is really that internal understanding of who you are related to your gender. It definitely develops earlier in life than a lot of people think. It definitely develops usually before they even get into our schools, usually around 3, 4, 5. If you ask a kid, are you a boy or a girl, or what's your gender in a more open way, they will clearly be able to tell you that.
No, they'll be able to tell you what's your gender. Do you know how many little boys, because they're with their mommies a lot, say they would rather be a girl or they want to be just like mommy? This is super common. Little boys in particular will put on their mom's jewelry. They walk around in her shoes. They'll want to wear her clothes. Sometimes they won't want to be a girl, but they'll say things like, can I marry you when I grow up? I mean, I've heard all kinds of stories. Little girls, they do that with their fathers. They put on their shirts. They put on their shoes. They want to, they look up to their daddy. This is like very normal stuff. It doesn't mean they want to literally be male. They're feeling in some respects. And I remember, I actually have a very vivid memory from being very small. And I remember desperately wishing I was a boy because I identified so much more with my father in terms of my personality. I now understand the reasons for that. And I won't get into that on this show, but we had a very similar, let's just say, neurological profile. How about that? And we identified, I got along with him. I didn't understand my mother. My mother was scary. My mother was a little bit abusive, to be honest with you. So I wanted to be, everything my dad was made sense to me. We thought the same. We expressed emotions the same. And I wanted to play sports because he liked sports. I liked baseball because he liked baseball. What did my dad like is what I liked because I loved my daddy. And I identified with him. Now, had they gotten their hands on me and said, what do you feel like? Are you a boy or a girl? When I was 3, I would have probably said, can I be a boy? And if they said, yes, you can, I'd be like, oh my God, fantastic. For real? I can be a boy. I was 3. I remember being in nursery school and being just like really bitterly resentful that I had to be a girl. I didn't know any better. I didn't know what that meant. I didn't even know what a boy looked like under his pants. Never saw one. I didn't see my dad. I never saw another boy. There's only girls in my house. This notion that girls know the difference or boys know the difference unless they're like shown these things. I didn't freaking know. I just knew that my dad was my hero. I wanted to be just like him. I liked all the things he liked, and I wish I could be a boy like him. I grew out of it pretty fast. Well, I say that, but I mean, I grew out of I wanted to literally be a boy. Once I realized probably by the age of 6 or 7 that no, I could just do boy stuff and be boyish and be a tomboy and play baseball and play soccer and do all those things. I didn't have to be a boy, literally. But little bitty kids don't know that. They don't understand. And that really hasn't changed all that much.
It tends to be fixed by early elementary as well, by about the ages of 7.
You don't know if it's fixed. They have an identity, or they have that, like, what I think I want to be, but whether it's fixed or not, no. I'm sorry. I need to see the research on that.
Most people, just statistically, identify as cisgender, which means the gender they understand themselves to be on the inside matches the body they were born into, and that's called cisgender.
Nope, that's just called sex. That's all that is. That's not called cisgender. That is your invention.
Some people find that actually their understanding of their gender and the inside is not matching up with the body they were born into. So they may identify as transgender, or they may.
Okay, let's spend a moment on this matching concept. In order for something to match, you have to have a rubric. You have to have a fixed mark of what a girl is, or what a boy is, or what a male and a female are like. To say my body doesn't match what I feel like on the inside, what does that mean to a 5-year-old? They've only ever been themselves. They didn't have anything else to compare it to. So they've never actually been the opposite sex. So how do they go, well, no, I really feel like that thing I've never been. They get that idea from somewhere, from someone, from somebody else's rubric. And of course, when you see some of the materials that their wonderful organization has provided for families and children, you might understand where that might come from. Where you helpfully suggest to the child, if you feel like this, maybe this. If you feel like that, if you like this more than that. Or you just show them people like colorful drag queens dressed in fun, bright, sparkly colors, dancing around to fun, bright, sparkly music, which please show me how many children, especially creative children, don't like fun, sparkly, brightly colored things. Most do. And the ones that are even especially really creative and imaginative like it the most, just helpfully suggest these things.
Identify as non-binary, gender expansive. There's lots of identities. This is a very fluid issue. And so people figure out what identity works best for themselves in their own experience. But it's just when those two things don't have alignment in terms of
alignment. This concept needs to go away. There's no, I don't know what Leave Them Kids Alone, for example, who I happen to know is female. I don't know what she feels like in her body as girlness, womanness. I don't know. Does nothing to do with how I feel. Or I feel like what I just am a woman. It's not about feeling like a woman. I am one. I don't know what it would feel like not to be this. And by all accounts, when I talk about how I feel about a variety of things and how I think and so on, I meet plenty of women who look at me like I have horns and 3 heads because they can't relate to me at all. We're still all women. But they're like, I don't get how your brain works. And like, you're weird. I always had trouble forming female friendships. Like I said, I don't know why. But does that make me not a woman anymore because the other women don't get me and I get along better with men because of the way I'm wired? No, I'm still a woman.
Of their body and their understanding of their gender. So what's interesting is, how do we know when this develops? Well, we know when all kids develop a gender identity, cisgender, transgender, or anything in between. If we look at this really helpful handout from the American Academy of Pediatrics, a really trusted source of good information.
No, it's not.
You can see right here on this information chart that they share with parents that they talk about it really developing around the ages of 4 to 5. So we know this is something that by the time they get into our kindergarten classrooms, students generally have an understanding. They may not have the language, but they'll have the understanding of what their gender identity is.
Yeah. Most of them do, but that's because they just are what they are. They're not necessarily open to the suggestion that there's something else. That's all that means. That doesn't mean there's a third thing.
And so just have a sense of that it happens pretty young. So generally there is an identity of cisgender if the body they were born in matches what their understanding of their gender is on the inside. And sometimes there might not be that alignment. So let's watch a quick video about that.
Tonight, we're taking a closer look at something that's been getting a lot of attention recently, the subject of being transgender. We've seen adults share their stories on television shows and in magazines, but rarely do we hear from the youngest members of the transgender community. Tonight, our national correspondent.
Oh my God. The youngest members of the transgender community. Now they're taking little children and shoving them into a community. They're not members of a community. They're not. You don't claim people. You don't just get to claim people. They're members of their family. But that's how they get lured in. Oh, I'm in a club. And Lester Holt is just like, yeah, tonight we're hearing from them. I'm not going to question any of this. This is just totally normal.
Correspondent Kate Snow is here with one family's very personal story. Kate?
Lester, good evening. By some estimates, there are 700,000 adults in the U.S. who are transgender. And while we don't know the exact number of children, increasingly families are going public with what it means to be a transgender kid.
5-year-old Jacob LeMay is fierce. He loves karate and dogs and spaceships and playing with his sisters.
So 2 sisters and you're the brother, right?
Yeah.
Were you always the brother?
I'm not always.
What were you before?
I'm their sister.
How come it changed?
Because I wanted to be a boy.
Okay.
In the beginning, Mimi and Joe LeMay were raising 3 girls. But when Mia was around 2, she started saying, "I'm a boy."
Okay. Youngest child, 2 other girls, 2 years old. I'm a boy. Okay.
Did you think it was a phase?
I hoped it was a phase.
Mia learned to write her name, but would immediately scribble it out. Jacob still remembers.
I didn't like to write that name. I wanted to write Jacob.
Jacob?
Yeah.
Jacob. You already picked it out, right?
Yeah.
You look beautiful right now.
Even something as simple as a haircut wasn't.
What do you think, Mia? I want someone to cut my hair, and I want it to be like that.
Mimi didn't know what to think.
I even found him kind of poking at himself, saying things like, why did God make me this way? Why did God make me wrong? I was confused and concerned, and I hoped that this obsession with being a boy would go away.
But it only grew stronger. The LeMays went searching for answers.
Her need to play boy roles and her need to be seen or spoken to as a boy at home became very persistent and very consistent. Those are the hallmarks of a possibly transgender child: consistence, persistence, and insistence. And she was meeting all those markers.
Pediatrician Dr. Michelle Forcier says gender identity is formed very early.
It's not a fad or a phase. And I tell parents that, even though they may feel or want to believe that.
Just for the record, this individual was in Matt Walsh's movie, What is a Woman? And refused to answer his questions and kept insisting that puberty blockers were totally safe, and then shut down the interview when he was pressing her for answers about specific things. Now, we can all see that this little girl is very, sort of masculine presenting and so forth. But how many women have you seen who end up being lesbians, typically, or who are just very, what we used to call butch, okay? Are still female. Now, my heart breaks, to hear this little kid, I'm a boy, I want to be a boy, I want to be a boy. But why didn't anybody at any point in time consider the possibility that they needed to help this child understand that you can have the haircut, you can wear the clothes, you can do all the things that look and present like a boy. You can even change the name, but you're still a girl. You just have a different name and you have all these things, but you're still actually a girl in your body. Well, why is that so impossible to do?
Your 4-year-old probably knew that they were a boy or a girl at 3, 4, 5 years old, and that's a normal part of child development.
Last spring, the LeMays went to Disney World and let their 4-year-old dress as Prince Charming.
he was really happy in that moment. He was being perceived as he wanted to.
After agonizing for years, Minnie and Joe say they knew it was time to listen to their son.
I explained to him that we can bring you to a new school and everyone will know you as a boy from the beginning. Right then he said, that's what I want.
He said, I want to be a boy always. I want to be a boy named Jacob.
And so last June, they cut his hair short, asked family and friends to call him Jacob, and let him live publicly as a boy.
He hasn't had any medical procedures, not on hormones, right?
Not yet.
That won't
Way too soon for that.
Really?
Way too soon for that.
That's a blessing.
We're going to hear your story and think 4 is really young.
But a mother's heart knows when her child is suffering.
All of this is new terrain, but many doctors who work with transgender kids now support families making the transition at an early age.
We have a long history of children who have been shut down and told, no, you can't be a boy, or no, you're not a girl. We know those kids suffer, and there's a host of bad health outcomes and psychiatric outcomes.
People who are transgender face a greater risk of anxiety and depression, and according to a 2011 survey, a startling 41% had attempted suicide.
Again, they're conflating this child's story with these other statistics, and we have a high rate of attempts across the board, not just transgender kids. So they're segmenting this out, or kids rather, who identify as transgender, and they're making it like it's unique to that. It's teenagers across the board are having problems. But as far as this child, the research also shows that most kids who go through this at this age desist when they hit puberty. When they hit puberty, they desist. This is not unique. You might be looking at this and going, oh, Deb, but don't you think it's definitely true? We don't know. We cannot know. And I'm glad to see that the parents are not making any medical decisions. They've just done we don't want you to be so uncomfortable. You can have the haircut, you can do all the stuff. But I hope they do the watch and, wait and all that. And that is consistent with what people at GenSpect say to do. Okay. It doesn't sound either like they're saying to their daughter, son, whatever, that you are a boy, but we will go ahead and call you that. I just think we have to stay in the realm of reality.
So would you tell parents that in some ways it's riskier to wait?
Absolutely. In fact, what I say, the biggest harm is to do nothing.
Ultimately, Jacob has made that choice in his mind and his heart. It's whether or not we accept it or not.
Accept it. That's right.
And now Jacob says he's proud of who he is.
What are you proud of about yourself?
Cause I'm a boy.
You guys make up your own minds about that. But like I said, I just feel like there's a lot we don't know about this story.
You look really handsome. Are you ready for today? Are you ready for school?
Yeah.
Okay. I want him to know how proud I am of him, how brave I believe he is, and how no matter what, I am in his corner. And I love him. And I always will. Because he's my son.
This really has been a journey for Jacob and his family. They have a long time before they even need to consider whether he wants medical intervention. Tomorrow, we'll bring you the story of another transgender child who's a few years older.
That decision coming a lot quicker for that family. I was bombarding you with questions earlier, a lot of questions here. We want to let folks know if you want to ask questions immediately following our broadcast, Kate and the doctor you just heard from will be hosting a live discussion on our Facebook.
Hey, NBC News fans, thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe.
And consistent when it comes to knowing what their gender identity is, just like we saw in Jacob.
And like I said to you earlier, the other young man was in the same situation and went on the puberty blockers at 9 and then changed his mind. So, I mean, I just have to believe that there is a better way than to affirm and go with the story that you are a boy. It's like, okay, we will treat you this way. We'll do this thing, but you are still a girl. And here's why you need to let your body grow and do the things it needs to do. And then we'll talk about it again later. But I just think this, you need to go on hormones or you need to have medical intervention. No, I don't see that. And especially going from female to male, if there's surgery involved, it's very, very, yeah.
I want to show you one more quick video. This is an animated video from a project we run at Advocates for Youth called Amaze. It really, I think, will help.
Kelly S. and I have talked about Amaze on this channel before. They show these videos to kids in school. This is a website that has, if the kids want to go to it on their own, there's an instant exit, like exit now for safety. Like, so the parents or somebody won't know that they're watching these videos, and it goes into things you would not believe the stuff that they go into on Amaze. It is. And then there are ways for kids to chat with total strangers through Amaze that you have no idea who they are.
Help concretize some common questions that adults have, but from the perspective of young people. So we'll play it next, and then we'll have a chance to get your reactions.
All right, folks, here we go. A romaine and kale salad with avocado, cucumber, shishito peppers, and 4 kinds of cheese, sprinkled in balsamic straight from Italy.
Wow. In my day, salads only had 2 ingredients. A rock-hard wedge of iceberg lettuce and a stinky old dried-up tomato.
In my day. Yeah, salads have always been able to have a lot of ingredients. In my day. What?
Sorry, guys. I'm gonna have to eat fast. Alex is stopping by in a few minutes to work on our robotics project.
Alex, is that the girl with that weird dog or the boy with the hat with the wings that flap?
No, Uncle Jay. This is Alex.
Oh, okay. I remember. A very nice young, come to think of it, well, is Alex a boy or a girl?
Actually, Alex doesn't define themselves as boy or girl.
What else is there?
Back in your day, most people understood the world in terms of just boys and girls. But now, we know gender is more complex than that.
Wait.
You old timer. Back in your day, well, things are changing. So which is it? That we just now understand that there's more, or are there actually more? Or is it a new fad? Like, is it a fashion thing? Like, there's new ways to say things or new ways to make a salad. I'm a little confused.
Aren't we just talking about whether you're born with a or a
This is a video for children. Whether you're born with a or a I mean, if you're going to have videos on there that talk about anal sex and whatnot, I mean, why are you not using penis and vagina?
When you're born, your sex is assigned in a medical way. But
in a medical way? Is that what we call biology now? It's a medical way. Your sex is assigned. Yes, it's very medical for the doctor to go, that's a penis. Oh, look, labia and a vagina. I mean, that's a medical way or just a scientifically accurate way, biological way, observational way? Okay.
The sex listed on your birth certificate may not necessarily match your gender identity.
Again, with the gender identity. Watch this. Watch what gender identity is.
Gender identity is a person's inner experience of who they are in terms of gender, their deep personal sense of being male, female, a blend of both, or neither.
Do you remember there used to be something called femininity, masculinity, personality? Remember the term personality? Remember that? Remember some people can have sort of more traits that we would characterize as more masculine or characterize as more feminine. And then they'd have a personality that was either like very outgoing and agreeable, which we tended to think was a little bit more feminine, or very, taciturn, or, serious, or even just, like funny and goofy, which might make more masculine or whatever. No, their inner experience of gender. Again, what the hell is that? They've created this concept of a gendered essence. They can't measure it, can't quantify it, can't pin it down, but they're suggesting it right into people. Wait until they give a name to your sense of spirituality. Wait till they do that. What's your spiritual identity? Wait till they just completely get rid of the notion that you can, believe something because you chose to believe it, which is essentially what they're doing here. Wait till they make that an essence too.
And while many people have a gender identity that's the same as their assigned birth sex of female or male, that's not
many people. So we went from most to many on the way to everybody's queer, by the way.
always the case, because gender exists on a spectrum.
No, personality exists on a spectrum. Gender doesn't exist on a spectrum. There are males and there are females. And they come in all different personalities. Extremely masculine females like that little girl, Mia, and extremely feminine little boys. And I knew one, I worked with one. Oh my goodness. If he didn't have a really severely receding hairline, etc., every other thing about him was more feminine than I am. He was absolutely more feminine than I am. Taller, but thinner, more delicate, absolutely delicate hands, very long, delicate fingers. I have kind of short, stubby fingers. Delicate, like his arms, his legs, everything about him, the way he walked. I walk into a room and it's kind of like this, and he just glided into rooms. He's gay. Very, 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 very feminine. Love to cook, love to decorate, almost stereotypical, right? But a guy. Definitely a male.
transgender, which means a person whose gender identity is not consistent with their assigned birth sex.
This is so regressive. I can't.
Non-binary, which means a person whose identity doesn't fall in the category of either male or female.
So how do they know? I mean...
And genderqueer or gender fluid, which means a person who does not identify themselves as having a specific gender at all.
Which I guess is different than non-binary. How? I don't have one at all. I have no sense of who I am in my body. None whatsoever. That might be like a separate condition we haven't yet named.
Does gender identity have to do with being straight or gay?
Actually, no. Gender identity has to do with the way you feel about yourself, while sexual orientation is based on the way you feel toward others, the people.
Well, then I guess it shouldn't really make any difference if that's what you really think. Then nobody should ever call a lesbian a transphobe, right? For not wanting to sleep with a trans woman. Because that's a man. The way I feel towards others, well, others includes people without a penis. But they call you a transphobe if you do that.
You may or may not be attracted to.
I really like Alex, and I can tell they're a good friend to you. But I'm still pretty confused about all of this.
That's okay. You don't have to fully understand someone to respect them.
And water's wet. You don't have to fully understand someone to respect them, to be polite to them, to do all kinds of things. But you don't necessarily have to go along with what they are, what they're doing either. You don't have to do that. You don't have to participate in that thing. You can if you want to. I'm not saying don't, but I'm just saying you don't have to. They can't demand, if they start demanding that of you, that's a them problem, not a you problem.
Try not to make any assumptions about a person's gender and use the name and pronouns that they ask you to.
No. My mouth will do what my eyes tell it to do. That goes both ways. I may refer to Buck Angel as he because my eyes tell me to do that. Or Sarah Higdon as she because my eyes tell me to do that. That's just what comes naturally. And I don't want to get grief from gender critical people for doing that. That's what my eyes tell me to do. I'm going to do it because it's convenient for me. Because that's what pronouns are for my convenience when I'm speaking. I'm not going to trip over myself, making it harder to speak and formulate my thoughts to the point where I don't want to speak to you at all. or even about you or have anything to do with you, because you make interaction with you like walking on eggshells. So I'll do what my eyes tell me to do. I won't go out of my way to say she about Buck Angel, because that's harder to do. I can do that. And when I come across somebody where I can clearly see, this happened just the other day, I can tell that is a man dressed as a female, not pulling it off. They're 6'3", very muscular, 5 o'clock shadow, even with the makeup, even with the long hair grown out, whatever. Yep, that's a dude. I can tell. But luckily, I don't have to have a lengthy interaction with this individual because we're just in a store and they're a salesperson. So I'm polite. I smile. I say, do you have this in another size? I interact. I move on. I don't need to say, did someone help you today? Oh, yes. I think the salesperson over there in the striped shirt. There you go. Problem solved. We good? I mean, I don't need to go that you can get around this. You don't use it. Then no.
Above all, be a friend or ally for people.
Only if I feel like it. If I want to be your friend, I'll be your friend. I don't do the ally thing. I don't do that.
Of all gender identities.
That's right, Mom. Oh, Alex is here. Come on in.
Hey, everyone.
Oh, hey, Alex. Care for some salad? The balsamic's right from Italy, you know.
Awesome. All right.
See, and then these are the other groups: youth and tech and health, answer, sex ed, honestly, and advocates for youth. They all put this together. So what did we just see? We just saw a video aimed at children that it basically normalizes all of this. This is totally normal. But did they tell us anything we didn't already know or wouldn't already do? You know, they're basically saying, don't be rude and nasty to people who are different than you. Okay, thanks. That's good. But the rest of it is religious dogma. Well, there were only two genders when you were growing up, but now there's this is this and that is that. And that's a belief system. That's it. No, simply saying, you know what, these days there's some people and they believe this set of beliefs. And we just need to, you know, still be polite to them because they're humans and they're nice to me. Okay. That's all you had to say. I'm not changing what I think gender is. I'm not changing what pronouns I'm going to use. I'm not doing things differently or believing things differently just because someone else has a belief system. Any more than I would have someone said, well, these people, and they believe that Jesus rose from the dead and he came back and to save us from our sins and so on and so forth. And I'd be like, oh, cool. All right. I don't. I wouldn't be mean to them. Why would I? That's just common, politeness. And in reverse, I would hope too. So they took their little religion and stuffed it into a little, be nice.
So I hope that was helpful to just kind of echo how there's a difference between gender identity and sexual orientation, which we'll dive into next. And also that we don't need.
Over the Hill, Dill says, you need to address that salesperson by their pronouns, not their striped shirt. Are you racist? I'm not sure how their garment makes me racist, but to be fair, they didn't have a name tag or pronouns for me to use. But you wanted me to guess? They just said, don't assume. So the only way I could have used a pronoun is if I had guessed. Now, what if, just for the sake of discussion, this person wearing red lipstick and long hair, but with 5 o'clock shadow and the calves of a male sprinter. Okay. What if they were a dude cross-dressing, not seeing themselves as women at all? Just, I'm a guy. I just like to dress as a woman. Could also be the case these days, couldn't it? If the lesson is don't assume, and if I said she and I'm wrong, then I've made a terrible mistake. Oh, you're being facetious. Okay. You never know, Over the Hill Dill. You got to be fair. I don't know. It's a little tismy, but I don't know. So, anyway, sorry. Yeah, you don't know, because there are still guys who cross-dress, and now that's completely acceptable as well. Remember, RuPaul is a man and doesn't deny that. So we talk about drag or drag queen, and when RuPaul goes out into the street, RuPaul dresses like a man. But what if RuPaul happened to be coming in dressed in a dress that day and I said she? It's just
to have all of our questions answered and have all of that information at our fingertips in order to know to be respectful and supportive of all of our students and all of our students' families. So it's okay to not know all the answers. What's more important is how we treat our students and make sure they feel seen, heard, and respected in our classrooms.
Now, this one I'm conflicted on, because while I will say it's not the job of the teachers to affirm, or to sort of like do the whole, what's your gender? Whatever. I mean, if you have to ask, then already that's a problem. You're planting a seed of an idea. If we're talking about a family like this family, like Jacob's family, my understanding is that Jacob's family would come to the school and Jacob's family would do one of two things, because Jacob's still quite young. Jacob, Mia, whatever you want, would either not tell the teacher one way or the other, and the kid presents as a boy and the teacher has no idea, and then leave it all in the dark. Okay? Nobody knows. Moving on. There's no reason, given the way the child dresses, given the name, given everything else, that the teacher would even have to know. So why would there be a problem? There wouldn't be any disrespect. It would just be, this is the little boy in the class. In elementary school, there's not likely to be any reason for anybody to know the difference. All right? On the other hand, if you have a student that comes to your class who very, very obviously looks like a boy, but the parents are putting him in dresses and whatnot, and they're like, please refer to my child as this, as Mary and whatever, and this kid is clearly male, or whatever. Even the kid is like not all on board with it, or just kind of like going through it, like mommy says that. Then I'm conflicted. I'm like, I don't know. I'm not going to I would never, ever, under any circumstances, especially with a young child, even with a teenager for that matter, I'm not going to assert my wishes onto them either. What's your name? Okay, that's your name. That's what I'm going to call you. But I will stick up for my female students if they don't want this person going in the bathroom with them. That's where I draw the line as a teacher. So if my female students are saying, I feel uncomfortable with so-and-so, they keep coming in the girls' bathroom, and I see it as something that's getting a little out of hand, a little aggressive, I might say something. So I'm conflicted, because I don't think it's my job to be nasty, rude, exclusionary, whatever, any more than it is my job to affirm. But I'm going to draw the line at reality. If I'm asked, if I'm put in the position where it's like, make a choice between reality and going along with this thing, and that's what we call respect, then I guess I don't get to work there anymore.
So again, just to reiterate, around gender identity, there's a wide range of identities beyond just transgender and gender non-binary and gender queer, gender fluid. So just be aware that this is something that continues to evolve, and it's okay that people need to figure out what their own identities are for them at whatever point works for them in their lives. We also just want to quickly touch on, as the video did in Amaze, that it's different from sexual orientation. I think this is where I hear a lot of teachers struggling, like, wait, does this mean they're gay, or does this mean they're like, I don't know.
Elementary school teachers shouldn't be talking to anyone about sexual orientation, period, full stop, end of story. They're pre-sexual. Let's not have a conversation about it at all with our students, or about our students, or anything to do with that. And this is supposed to be about elementary school. It seems like false billing. So either this isn't really just about elementary school, or we're talking about issues of sexual orientation prepubescent children. Now you may say, well, Debs, these days some kids start puberty at 9, 10 years old. Fair enough. That does happen. But they tend to not yet be like sexually, like in the sexual orientation conversations with their teachers, right? Even in sex ed, you're not really talking in elementary school about these issues. I'm not going to say there's no 9 and 10-year-olds who start to know that they're attracted to the opposite sex or the same sex, whatever. I know for a fact there are. But it's just still wildly inappropriate for adults other than their parents to be talking to them about sex beyond birds and bees. Where do babies come from? And even that, it's a little touch and go. We didn't learn about that until middle school, 7th, 8th grade. We were taught about other biological changes, about puberty itself.
get how those all works. So really sexual orientation, as it said in the video, is kind of outward facing, and who in this world really gets your heart racing when you're going through puberty and all of a sudden you have those new feelings that are romantic and or sexual. What are the gender or genders of people that make you feel interested in being in a relationship, or holding someone's hand or hugging them or kissing them or all those kinds of things? That is not typically known until someone goes through puberty. So
this is correct. That is true.
We're looking at upper elementary, even into middle school for some. A common orientation is heterosexual, or you may have heard that called straight. We also know more and more young people are really figuring out what their sexual orientations are, and it could be queer, it could be asexual, it could be pansexual or demisexual, or all this kind of stuff. So this is something that also continues to evolve, and it is something that we should allow young people to lead for themselves and let us know their identities at the point at which it makes sense in their lives. So hopefully I've been able to kind of tease apart some of these three concepts for you and help you know how they're connected, but how they're also distinct from one another. That sex assigned at birth is something we typically know by the time a baby is born. The gender identity tends to gel around lower elementary, particularly even before they start kindergarten, 3, 4, 5 years old, usually permanent by around the age of 7. And then sexual orientation is connected to puberty. And
the fact that she keeps saying usually permanent by the age of 7, as if it's changeable up until the age of 7, that concerns me, because like I said, they're not waiting until 7 to present this information in terms of, well, we just want them to be inclusive. We want the school to be inclusive and we want them to feel cared about, whatever. Okay, well, that's different than presenting them the notion they might be something different before it's permanent. So you're at least allowing the possibility that they will change their minds. So are they or are they not born this way? Is their sense of self and their gender identity, is it something they just are, or is it open to suggestion? Which is it? Am I the only person who hears that? I don't think so, because I see that Adrian is saying that's drawn from John Money. Exactly. It's drawn from John Money, who, if you're not familiar with, did horrific experiments on a pair of boys, both of whom ended up dead. One stayed a girl, or one became a girl, one stayed a boy. All kinds of horrible things ensued, including death. So she just blows right through this. Usually permanent by the age of 7. Okay, then talk about it then. If this is really for the children to decide, if this is really up to them, and if it's really something that's inside of them, you do not need to present it as an option before then. Otherwise, you are running the risk of influencing them, grooming them, getting them to believe that this will be a way for me to be approved of in a club, in a clique, in a special thing, have a special category just for me. They look around, they see the rainbows and the flags and the bling and all that, the swag, the holidays, the lessons. If you're feeling anything like, I want to be special, I want to be different, and this is presented as an option, there's always that possibility. So I find it to be terribly contradictory. Terribly contradictory.
Connected to some of those romantic and sexual feelings that come to us when we look out in the world, and there's lots of identities related to all of those. All right. So now that we know, what can we do? I'm sure that's why many of you are here, and I've enjoyed kind of looking at the chat and seeing people kind of share back and forth some of this information. So let's talk a little bit about some of these strategies.
You know, praise the chat, praise the people. Oh, I just loved all the things that you're saying about this that agree with me and are validating what I'm teaching you. And social pressure, social pressure. All right, simple strategies that help.
What I want to do is share first and foremost that we have this really incredible guide that our
I will show you that. I have it pulled up.
Trans colleagues and folks in our health and social equity department wrote. It's called the Trans Affirming Schools Project Resource Guide. This has not only trainings, but this amazing guide. It is is available to you through this portal and for this webinar. It's also freely available on our website, and I put up a QR code just to make sure you had all the ways to access.
Free QR code. I don't want you to miss out. Here it is. Free. Take the stuff. Free. Take our propaganda.
Access it. But in this guide, there are 4 specific ideas that are enumerated for folks to really help them think about how we can better support trans and gender expansive young people. And one is to look at our policies, knowing that we don't have a lot of administrators in the room. I'm not going to spend too much time on that, but obviously a policy around anti-bullying, anti-harassment that specifically talks about gender identity and gender expression.
A censorship policy that specifically talks about the ways you must and may not speak about these students and the things you may not do. And, it's just a policy. We call it anti-bullying and so forth, but it really just means, we're going to bully you into submission.
Is super important, just like it is related to sexual orientation. We also know other things are related to our curriculum. So maybe we are the person teaching health. Maybe we can talk to the health teacher. Maybe we've got some literacy assignments, some ELA work, some stuff related to all different kinds of family diversity to make sure that all of our school classrooms really represent all of our families and all of our young people.
That's our primary goal. Making the classroom represent everybody, or making sure the kids learn. So another thing that I try to talk about a lot on this channel and really, drive home is that our schools are trying to do too many things and they're ending up doing none of them well. And when you decide that the school is there to affirm you, reflect you, celebrate you, validate you, all these other, basically allow you to externalize your self-esteem. All of the ways that you derive self-esteem are going to be housed in the school. It's going to be the school's responsibility to make sure you feel good about yourself. And so the lesson you learn at a very young age is how other people see me and how other people treat me are facts. That's who I am. They're not wrong unless I feel really, really bad. If I feel bad about myself, somebody's hurting me. Who is it? Let's find the perpetrator. Let's find the perpetrator. When in fact, some environments are just toxic. And you need to remove yourself from them. You need to take responsibility. And that's not truth. Or they're not hurting you. Sometimes an environment is hurting you, but that doesn't mean you are a victim. It means you're in the wrong environment. You're only a victim if you can't leave. If you literally can't leave, if you're a kid trapped in a school, now you're a victim. But you're not a victim because you exist in a space that won't constantly celebrate you. They're teaching these kids to have external motivations, external identity, and that is very dangerous. That is what cults do. That is what makes people easy to control. One of the first things that a person who's trying to coercively control you does is get you to externalize your identity, get you to pour out your heart about things that bother you, things that hurt you, fears you have, insecurities you have, anxieties you have. And then guess what they do? They tell you why you have them. They tell you. They don't try to get to the bottom of why you have them. They tell you why they exist, and then they so helpfully give you the solution. And almost always, the reason you have all these fears and anxieties and so forth is looking around, their fault. And who's they? The people they want to isolate you from because they might contradict the person trying to control you. This is what cults do. Your parents won't accept you. The greater society doesn't accept you. Anybody who contradicts me, because I understand you now. You just poured out your heart to me. You can trust me. I understand you. They don't. And the kid might believe it. Adults believe it. Adults like, well, maybe that explains why I feel so rotten is nobody understands me. But you do. And of course they lie. Oh, I understand you. I understand you perfectly. These people are hurting you. That doesn't mean they understand you. That means they took it in as ammunition. They found a person to conveniently to blame to let you off the hook and make it easy to solve. And then they give you a solution, which of course conveniently serves their needs. That's exactly what this is.
And then obviously to do like we're doing here, to make sure that we ourselves take advantage of more information to get ourselves our questions answered, to make sure we've got good resources that we can access, good support networks.
Good resources equal the ones that we say that are good. Not just, you don't discern. We've decided.
Works that we can get our questions answered from.
I thought you have your questions answered, ma'am. You notice she never says you. It's always we. You're already with me. You're already with me. We're already on the same team.
Really, just when I think I understand it, then something new happens and I need to go study some more.
Oh, humility, fake humility, but we.
So that's the beauty of being a lifelong learner, right? To continue to understand and learn more. And then obviously for middle schools and high schools and some elementary schools who are lucky enough to have a GSA.
An elementary school is lucky enough to have a GSA. Did she not just get done saying that elementary school is not where we talk about, it is not where kids are usually focused on sexual orientation? Did this entire presentation not tell us that sexual orientation and gender identity are different? And then she just let it slip. Elementary schools that are lucky enough to have a gay-straight alliance. Why, pray tell, does an elementary school need a gay-straight alliance?
Student clubs like a Gay Straight Alliance can also be helpful as well. So if you're interested in learning more about this, I really recommend that you get your hands on this guide. It's on our website. It's available through the materials for today's webinar. Here's the QR code, because it has more detailed information about all 4 of these strategies. So there's a section on policies, a section on inclusive curriculum, one on professional development, which we offer, and many other organizations do.
There's more classes. By the way, this is just one through the AFT that they put in Share My Lesson. So this is her lesson that she's sharing as a webinar, but she's inviting everybody, come on over. So teachers could go take 4 or 5 more of these if they wanted to.
Do as well, and then one on student club. So that's like a nice one-stop shopping for you. I recommend it in all your free time to download that guide and take a look at it and share it with colleagues. We're really proud of it, and it's got some great information. And then additionally, specific to elementary levels, I wanted to just talk about a strategy that is super simple, which is just around pronouns. And I know that this has gotten a little politicized these days, but some of the things that we can do is, you saw me in the beginning when I introduced myself, I make sure to always include my pronouns, no matter what space I'm in. I make no assumptions about anybody.
This is a speech code. And it sounds so nice. I make no assumptions about anybody. Except you don't need to, because parents have enrolled their children in elementary school as their gender, as their sex. You just said the kids know as early as 3. So can we safely assume that the children and the parents have already been a conversation about that, where the kid already knows I'm a girl, I'm a boy, whatever? Can you just go with that? Can you go with that and not introduce doubt? Oh, I don't make any assumptions. I'm asking you to assume that the parents know their kid. I'm asking you not to suggest that you should out your pronouns when, if a kid shows up dressed like a boy and they're actually a girl or anything, you don't know. You want them to out themselves now? Well, she talks about that in a minute, but pronouns for elementary school. This is how they legitimize introducing doubt to children.
And then I invite opportunities for learners to share their pronouns in ways that they feel comfortable. So maybe that's on the first day, we're going to go around and we're going to write on index cards pronouns we like to be called. Maybe it's a nickname. Maybe we're going to put it on a name tag or on a lanyard, all the different ways that we get to know our students and their names. Invite them to share with you, not just what their name.
Invite them to share and share and share. Take these very young children and pull them into a little web of trust and share these things, which you already said was decided before they ever came to school. Why do you need this? They were registered as male or female. It's right there on your roster.
Names are, but what their pronouns are, and really follow their lead, right? Like you might have a roster that's
teach the children very, very young that they're kind of in charge of these decisions,
says one thing, and you might have students that say something different. So we want to honor our kids and honor that they are the experts of their own identities. And so
No, they're not. They're demonstrably not. Have you not even seen like teenagers? They change, their hair, their clothes, I mean, no. I'm sorry. They're not the experts of their own identities. I've talked to my eldest about this several times. She's now 20, and she says, I distinctly remember being 11 years old and wanting to be a mermaid. 11. I wanted to be a mermaid. I really, really, really wanted to be a mermaid. She even went and got one of those tail things that it's like fake tail, right? You pull it on and you swim in the pool with your little fin and whatever. That's what she wanted for her birthday. And she got one of those. She's like, if you'd asked me, I really wanted to be a mermaid. I wanted to sort of just embody mermaidness. She knew on some level she couldn't be a mermaid, but can you imagine somebody saying like, okay, let's just fuse your legs together. That's at 11. How is that any weirder than mutilating a child or saying like, hey, let's, lop off your perfectly healthy breasts and feed you some puberty blockers or cross-sex hormones?
Let them lead and tell you what their pronouns are and the names they'd like to be called. And then obviously a no-brainer to many of you who've been working with schools in an education field. Let's make sure that our classroom libraries and our school libraries, hopefully our public libraries too,
are chock full of books to indoctrinate the children into this little cult religion. Let's make sure that we have these books in front of the kids, whether their parents want them there or not. And, do you think that she really respects differences? Do you think she does? Do you think she genuinely respects the parents, who at home, they're respecting the school, that there's not religion coming into the school of the traditional religions? Do you think she respects their faith? No. And this is not secular. This is a belief system. Make sure you have books that are absolutely full of our belief system.
This is a dicey issue these days, but make sure that they represent every student in our school. Make sure that everyone can,
including the Christian and the Jewish ones. No, I don't think so. I don't think you mean that.
See their families represented. We know that that's so important around race, ethnicity, around family diversity. We also know it's really important around these issues as well. And there's amazing research to back this up. And there's great resources.
It's a little bit like listening to Donald Trump. Amazing, great, fantastic, good, bad, scary. We throw in these adjectives and we're supposed to just all be on board with that. I don't think they're amazing. I don't think they're great. I think they're schlocky and poorly written, heavy-handed propaganda. And they absolutely leave no room for disagreement whatsoever, or even questioning.
From some of the typical suspects, the librarians always leading the way with some great books, book lists, and ways that you can access that. We actually have a project called Hope in the Box, which really has a lovely list of books at different grade levels that are very inclusive and affirming that you're welcome to check out as well. And speaking of resources, I want to make sure we have some time to get to some great resources that exist both here at AFT through Share My Lesson and outside as well. So I'm just going to zip through these and hope that we leave some time at the end for some of your questions and to have more of a back and forth. So some resources that exist from our organization are a free K-12 sex ed curriculum called Rights, Respect, Responsibility. We update and reform this all the time. We're adding in new language, new resources, but I did just want to make sure that you knew it's available on Share My Lesson. It's 115 lessons long, and you can download any of it for.
Deb, where are they getting these lessons? Where do they get the lesson plans? Where do they get the curriculum? And like, how do I get my school board to what? Your school board or what? They just go online and download this crap. It's free. Teach it. They look at the standards. Where's my Common Core? All right, hang on. Let's get my glasses. Where's my Common Core? Okay, I need a lesson for 23B6. What? Oh, it's got to cover. All right, let's go to. Oh, there's one. Download. What do I do first? What do I do second? Boom, I did it. I taught sex ed. Easy peasy, lemon squeezy. Educate your educators. Go tell your colleagues how to do it. Okay, thanks.
Free of charge. It's LGBTQ inclusive and affirming. It's also available in both English and Spanish. So just know that that's available if you want to.
Wonder how those Spanish parents feel about some of the lessons in there. The Spanish speaking parents who tend to be Catholic and tend to be more conservative. I wonder if they know.
Kind of check it out and see what lessons may look like. Also, I mentioned this earlier. We've got this really great project called Amaze. It exists.
These videos are horrifying. Definitely go there. Go to amaze.org. Watch some of the videos. The one that she showed was very tame.
This not only here in the US, but around the world. And so there's great videos that are really targeting upper elementary, middle school, and even
targeting is a good word.
Into high school. I use them a ton in professional development.
I bet you do.
Because I think that it really helps a lot of adults as well as young people. We've got a whole
Helps is doing a lot of heavy lifting here.
Section for parents and caregivers. So there's a lot here if you want to check it out and see if there are any videos that may be helpful for your own understanding or to use with your students. We work a lot with the Human Rights Campaign.
I bet you do.
Amazing project called Welcoming Schools. They've got lesson plans. They've got
more lesson plans, free books, lesson plans. Yeah, the Human Rights Council, human rights organizations, they love to just dump free stuff into the schools right underneath your ability to hold them accountable for doing it.
They've got we did some videos together. They've got all kinds of great information there. So feel free to check them out as well. They exist both on Share My Lesson and they have their own standalone website. Yep, absolutely. And then lastly, just two more that I wanted to mention. So
gender expansive students.
Some states, and I see someone mentioning Florida.
Yeah, I know this is the American Federation of Teachers, and this is supposed to be our democracy, but Florida. It's a good thing we're not, using taxpayer dollars to politicize any of this. Good thing we're just educating teachers.
In some states, we know that there is really great guidance from the State Department of Education. So I just wanted to highlight.
But in other states, in some states, it's great guidance.
The Oregon Department of Education, and they're really great.
They're citing
guidance
Oregon
for public schools in Oregon.
Oregon is no longer having graduation requirements as far as the distribution and grades. You just finish on the date, and here's your diploma.
There's one in New York. There's some others that exist as well. But even if you can't do all of this, or you can't do some of it, it can have some really good educator-specific resources related to policies and facilities and bathrooms and locker rooms and all that kind of stuff that's kind of above and beyond classroom instruction. So just wanted to point that out as well.
And above and beyond the teacher's purview. But, I want you to be able to go and pressure and scream and yell at the school board meetings, just the same as everybody else. So, go read our propaganda.
And then there's this great Facebook group and forthcoming book called Gender Inclusive Schools by Dave Edwards, who's an amazing leader in this field. So I just wanted to mention that if you're a reader like me and are curious for another book on this topic. It's a really great one and a really fun Facebook group with a lot of great resources as well.
You can go check out the Facebook group. Great resources.
And lastly, I just wanted to make sure that you all know about that even here within AFT, there's some really great resources for young people about how to make all of our classrooms more inclusive, not just around gender identity and trans students, but also around students with varying sexual orientation identities and family members who may have LGBTQ identity.
Again, with the elementary school classroom. Now, she's talking about family members. Do you recall being in school and being remotely interested or concerned with the sexuality of your friends' parents? And it is 2024, so it's a rare kid out there at this point, given the prevalence of gay marriages and gay couples with kids and so forth. It's a rare kid that is just completely oblivious to the notion that someone has two mommies or two daddies or whatever. And even so, is that the job of the teacher to do anything other than like, oh, hey, how's it going? What, your mom and your other mom or whatever. Do we need to celebrate that in the classroom? Are you celebrating the straight parents? No, that's not the job of the teacher. If you have a specific child who's coming to school and going, you have two moms and that's weird. Okay, you pull that kid aside and you deal with it. That's extraordinarily rare. I've been around elementary and middle school kids for the last, even not teaching in the classroom, but volunteering, tutoring, et cetera, and so forth. My own kids going to school when they did. And I'm just thinking back and I'm like, yeah, that just didn't happen. Didn't happen. I mean, if you're in, some rural area of Kentucky or something, maybe it would happen. But how many of those situations do you run into there? Do we need to make the gay inclusive classroom in Eastern Kentucky? Is that like a big priority? Or are we starting to delve into grooming territory now? So, What happened to just respond to a situation if and when it occurs rather than presume everybody's guilty of being a bigot and shove it down everybody's throat constantly with young and confused children wondering like why they can't have two mommies because, you know, daddy's kind of mean. I'm just kidding. But you know what I'm saying?
As well. So like right at your fingertips, there's a whole bunch of stuff. Okay, so let me stop talking. I'm going to share my email address on there if we can do anything to help you at Advocates for Youth. If you want more information, if you want to reach out and just vent about what you're dealing with, or you need some support, we're really happy to be there for you in any way that would be supportive. So you don't have to go it alone. So we can all support each other.
We're all in it together.
Let me turn it back over to Ellie and see if there are questions that folks.
Okay. So then they go into questions. So we're not going to do that. And I'm going to remove this here. All right. So that was the webinar. I did promise you that I would show you the guide because I did download it. Here it is. Now, I mean, obviously I've kind of jumped ahead. Let me go back to the beginning. Let's see. It's pretty long, but what I did was I jumped ahead in the, this thing is endless, by the way, in the table of contents, because I was looking through this and I went, the building this about the legal landscape. Wait, what? Here we go. Advocating for gender inclusion, the legal landscape. Recently, new policies, procedures, and bills have been introduced to eliminate discussions of sexuality in schools. Many policies and bills have been introduced to directly target transgender, non-binary, gender expansive students. None of these bills target students. Let's be very clear. This framing is designed to make you think that the policies are hateful, bigoted, and aimed at hurting kids, which is super ironic because the reason they exist is there is evidence and concern, not just based on the evidence. I mean, based on reasonable supposition, but also evidence that the push to have this material at such young ages in the schools, or even in the schools at all, but definitely at the elementary school level, is a form of grooming, ideological grooming, cult-like grooming, not sexual grooming. Although there is that possibility of desensitizing young children to discussions about sex between, you know, children and adults. And I don't mean necessarily even a 6-year-old and a 30-year-old, but, you know, a 9-year-old and a, I don't know, 17-year-old, things like that. Just, you shouldn't be talking to young children about some of these topics is the argument. And there are good arguments to be made about that, but they make it as targeting the students as if this is the thing. They need to go to school and talk about sex with strange adults other than their parents. And they need to, you know, have all this stuff or else somehow they're hurt. I'm going to come back to that, Tony Baloney, 1 second. So then we have, okay, so it's prevent them from accessing an affirming and inclusive learning environment. That's not I mean, this is a new thing that they've just manufactured for students to have a right to. Students in the United States of America, by decree, you know, by law, not by natural rights, have an entitlement, I'm not going to call it a right, to a free and it's a free and an appropriate education. It's not even free because they're paying for it with their tax dollars, but that's what children in America have an entitlement to. Nowhere in there does it say affirming. There's nothing in the law. There's certainly nothing in the Constitution about education, period. But there isn't even anything in the different laws that have been passed that mandate this free and fair education about affirming identities or affirming anything. No, preventing them from accessing that, maybe that's a good thing. Let's have that conversation. Maybe we don't want them accessing affirmation around their parents. Maybe that's not the job of the school, to affirm them in their identities, their personalities, etc. Maybe, in fact, it's the job of the school to discourage certain kinds of personality traits like narcissism. say my pronouns, do what I want. Let me in the bathroom. Like you're a bigot. You're the do what I want or else. Maybe we need to not be affirming that. We can't even have that conversation because that makes us horrible people. You're targeting the students. No, we're not targeting the students. We're targeting the adults. We're targeting the adults we believe are either wrong, not terribly, they don't have terrible intentions, but they're wrong. And then those who do have intentions that we do not like and don't want mandatory as far as our children go. Then it says transgender, non-binary have the right to. Says who? Get this. Be who they are in school. Well, no one's saying they don't have the right to be who they are. Being open about their gender identity and transitioning while in school. And none of the laws prevent that. None of the laws prevent them from walking around the school going, I was born male and now I want to be a girl. Nothing in the laws that I've read says that they can't do that. It's not what this is about. It doesn't target the students. Write and speak about their identity. They can communicate it with their teachers, classmates, and in school assignments if they, and in school assignments. If it originates from the child, yes. If it literally originates from the child, that's freedom of speech. None of the laws infringe on their speech. Not one. Wear what they want to school. Well, within reason, if it's in the dress code, none of the laws infringe upon that. Clothing should still adhere to proper. Yes, he even says that. Participate in school activities and events consistent with their gender identity. Nope. You don't have a right to that. You do not have a right to that. That would be a huge privilege, and I don't think you should get it. Use the bathroom and locker room consistent with their gender identity. You don't have a right to that. No, you don't. So these things are not rights. Those would be privileges. Those would be things that a school might want to give you. A private school might want to give you that, but you don't have the right to it. And this is what they do. Oh, it's a right. No, it's not. Legal guidance on transgender, they're just going to keep calling it rights until they become rights, until they're codified as positive rights, either in the Constitution or your state constitution or whatever. And that's, of course, what we're trying to stop. Because if you make it a right for a male, a biological male, to be on the girls' swim team, as an example, or a girls' volleyball team or whatever, you have just taken away the right of that girl to have access to play volleyball on the girls' team. Because very quickly, what could happen with all of this, affirmation stuff is the team will quickly fill up with biological males and will no longer be a girls' volleyball team. So somebody's lost a right. As far as access goes, it's not that she has a right to play volleyball. She has a right to access to play, which her access goes away. So anyway, all right, I want to get back to Tony's comment here. He says, oddly, CRISPR babies actually have 3 parents. I have to look it up. What are CRISPR babies? I feel stupid. I should know this. Oh, gene edited therapy, collaboration. This is a thing? For real? Is this a real thing that they do gene therapy where they bring in other people's genes and now you've got a third parent? For real? Like in humans? Wow. Okay, I don't understand that very well, but clustered, regularly interspaced, shorts, palette. Is that what we're talking about with genome editing? Is that a real thing? Oh my God. Like, and they're, wait, hang on. So he says, oh, China, sorry. China has already done. Oh my God, that's kind of creepy. Are we already in transhumanism? We're already editing our genes? Oh my God. Okay. Thank you for giving me nightmares. Franken babies. All right. So anyway, Tony says, our rights are creator endowed and are listed in the Bill of Rights. That's it. Everything else is a privilege that has been bestowed by government and therefore can be taken away. Thank you, Tony. Man after my own heart. Yeah. So leave them kids alone says vegan babies. I think you meant Franken babies, but whatever. I don't think it's legal at all. I sure hope not. Oh my God. But I'm one of those people who thinks that surrogacy is wrong. I just do. And people say, but what about adoption? And what about, somebody put their baby up for adoption? I'm like, uh-huh. That's right. They didn't make the baby to put it up for adoption though, did they? That was one of those. That's like the best solution to an unfortunate situation. That's not, let's commoditize babies. To me, there's a difference. And I just don't feel comfortable with that. And you might say, you're going to really you want a law to prevent people from doing this? I don't know. It puts me up again in a strange place with my politics and my sense of individual rights, but I'm very uncomfortable with it. I don't like it. Morally, ethically, I have a serious problem with it. Your mileage may vary. Anyway, so that's, this document. It is endlessly long. It goes on forever. Inclusive curriculum, etc. While many believe that LGBTQ topics belong in social studies or health classes only, an LGBTQ inclusive curriculum could be implemented in any content area. I could do a whole other show on just this document. I'm not going to, but what I will do is I will, make sure you guys have the link afterwards in the little description box down there. And I also, when I do the blog post, it includes screenshots and different things, including that map with a bigger zoom in on what the black box says, since you wanted to know, that will be in there. The links will be in there. And what the blog post is just going to contain is sort of a quick summary of what this was about, some of my key takeaways, an embedded copy of this video if you don't want to watch it on any of these channels, and the ability to comment privately to me and through the blog anyway, and then links to these resources. That's what will be different there rather than just the video. I'm going to start trying to do that with more of my videos. Actually, it's something that I want to get better at, is giving you sort of value add on top of the video through the Woke Screen website. I apologize, I haven't done it thus far, but like I said, I'm kind of an operation of one, and it makes it a little bit more challenging. As to when that blog post will be available, I'm hopeful it will be Friday, but if not Friday, then Monday at some time certainly before the next Dissident Dispatch. That's my goal, is to have the show, have the write-up with the extra resources before the next show. I think it gives me enough of time up until my own deadline. But that's it. That's just one training, 2 hours, 35 minutes I took to go through a 1 hour deal with you. But I thought, there was enough to cover to go through it. I hope this has been informative, helpful, thought-provoking, humorous at times. I didn't get the chance to have anybody to make jokes about it when I was watching it. It was kind of painful to just sit and listen to it all by myself, because it really disturbed me, to be honest with you. When I can hear the frame, I've been doing this long enough. I can hear the framing. I can hear the propaganda. I can hear the brainwashing in real time. And it bothers me, because I know that the only reason that I can hear it and see it so clearly is that I've done this so much. And most people might watch this training and just be like, you're overreacting. What is your problem? They're just trying to be nice to their students. I don't hear anything wrong with this. What is the big deal? So they're asking poll questions in the middle of the thing. It's not, you're so paranoid. And yet, look around. Look at the results. So if you're inclined to watch this and think I'm paranoid or think I'm making a big deal out of it, just look at the results. Look at the level of confusion. They talk about they want to help kids and prevent anxiety and prevent SI. And yet it's at the highest levels it's ever been. And yet they've been doing this for well over a decade. This isn't brand new. They didn't just come up with this organization 5 minutes ago. They have been pushing this stuff in the schools for up to 10 years with this level of intensity. And we see the results. People are now having babies. I know parents who are in their early 30s. So that means 10 years ago, they were just sort of graduating high school, going into college and so on. And they're just now having babies, and they're talking about, we're not going to say with the child. I know a woman who's in mommy forums with other, young sort of 20 somethings and 30 somethings, and the pressure is intense. to be gender neutral with their kids, to let their boys wear dresses, to do all that. This is having an impact. People are thinking this is the latest, greatest thing. This is, in order to be good parents, we have to like show our kids all this stuff. We can't be authoritative on, nope, you're a boy. Yeah. And you're a girl. No mistakes were made. Now, like I said, I think they purposely picked a kid where this kid is very clearly on, different. I don't dispute that. But I am just disputing the idea that that kid's experience justifies the proactive teaching of all of this to all the kids, especially when you're in the next breath going to say, these kids don't have a sexual orientation yet, but let's make them so lucky to have a gay-straight alliance. And most of these kids are defined by the age of 7 what their gender identity is. So what? We got to get in there really quick in preschool and show them that their parents might be wrong? I don't see the need for being so proactive with this. And the results I see in terms of anxiety and confusion and suicidal ideation are telling me that we're doing something wrong. There are other things we're doing wrong that create these feelings, not just this, but this is a big part of it. Because one of the things that a child does know pretty certainly is if they have a decent family. Obviously there are exceptions, but if there are 2 parents that love them, whatever, that mommy and daddy love me and I am a girl, I'm a boy, I'm their son, I'm their daughter. This I know. I can trust my parents with the basics, right? Go to school at 6, first day of school, you're already nervous, you're already freaking out, whatever. It's like, what are your pronouns? Blah, blah, blah. It's a pretty heavy thing to start off with, unless of course they started them on it in preschool, which they're now doing. So maybe I'm the old grandfather at the table with the salad. I just thought that we could only have 2 genders. Maybe you think that. I don't know. I don't. Anyway, that's the show for this evening. Thank you so much for watching. Once again, I would ask you to please consider supporting the channel through one of the means down below. You can make a straight donation. You can join the community. You get a lot more value for that. Or you can support one of my affiliates. There are great books to be bought. My brain is so fried. The Heroes of History, or I'm an idiot. The book affiliate. Great books. Buy one. Seriously, they're fantastic. Thank you, Adrian. She's like, great show. And I'm like brain dead. Or, please go check out the Socratic Experience. Please do that. Consider your options. If you have kids in public school, please consider your options. This is a phenomenal program. You get a 10% discount if you check out from down below, or if you go through my link and at least look at it, at least see what they have to offer, and share it with friends who are looking for another school alternative and they don't have one in their neighborhood and they're thinking, maybe I'll go to virtual. This one, there are very few virtual programs I can recommend. This is one I can recommend 100% without hesitation. All right. All right. So Tony Baloney says, don't worry, Deb. We will win in the end. I don't know who he is. I don't even know what winning would look like, Tony. I just would like to go back to where, reality is reality. And you're not a bad person for saying so. Can we go there? That's a place I'd like to live, right? I made a meme the other day. I was like, come to reality. Or it's almost like, visit reality. Come for the truth, stay for the sanity. Anyway. All right, you guys, thank you so much for joining me. And please like, share, and subscribe. And I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.